My Bible was halfway down the aisle in my son's hands when I realized he wasn't bringing it to me. Evan? He stopped beside the fourth pew, the worn blue cover pressed against his gray suit. 10 minutes earlier, I had placed it on the front pew beside the aisle, exactly where the chapel coordinator told me immediate family would sit. Walter's name was stamped inside the cover. His funeral card still marked the 23rd Psalm. "I saved that seat," I said. Evan set the Bible on the fourth pew. "The front is full, Mom." It wasn't. There were 6 empty places, each marked with a sprig of rosemary and a cream-colored program. Marcy told me the first pew was for immediate family. His jaw tightened. For 1 second, I saw the exhausted 38-year-old who had once stood in my kitchen at 2 a.m, unable to decide whether to eat soup or go back to bed. Then his face settled. That pew is for the family we chose. From behind the chapel door, somebody laughed. A woman called for more pins. The organist played the first 3 notes of something and stopped. Evan nudged my Bible square with the edge of the pew, as if neatness might make the sentence less cruel. I had always known a mother could embarrass her son. Until that moment, I had not known she could embarrass him simply by being remembered. "Your boutonniere is crooked," I said. He looked down automatically. It wasn't crooked. While he checked it, I walked past him and sat beside my Bible. The Stonebrook Chapel had been built before people decided comfort was a spiritual virtue. The pews were hard, the windows leaked July sunlight in narrow colored strips, and every sound carried. A cough at the back could make the saints in the stained glass look judgmental. I sat with my purse on one side and Walter's Bible on the other. From where Evan had placed me, a stone column blocked half the altar. If I leaned left, I could see the arrangement of white roses. If I leaned right, I could see the minister's shoulder and the brass stand that held the unity candle. I could not see the center. Marcy, the coordinator, hurried toward me with a clipboard hugged to her chest. She was a narrow woman in a navy dress, with reading glasses hanging from a silver chain. Oh, Mrs. Cole. Her eyes moved from me to the empty front pew and back. "We had you. Plans changed." She opened her mouth, glanced over my shoulder, and closed it again. Event coordinators know when a family has placed a live grenade under the flowers. Their gift is stepping around it without disturbing the ribbon. "Would you be more comfortable on the outside?" she asked. "I'm on the outside now." Her eyebrows rose. "I mean the aisle," I added. "Yes, of course." She squeezed my shoulder and hurried away before I could make her responsible for understanding me. I put my palm on the Bible. The leather had gone soft at the corners from Walter carrying it to church for 31 years. He wrote in the margins in tiny block letters, mostly questions nobody could answer. Beside one verse about patience, he had written, "Does this include hard-headed sons?" Evan was 26 at the time. Walter had shown me the note during a sermon, and I had nearly choked, trying not to laugh. That was the passage Evan had asked me to bring. 3 weeks earlier, he'd stood at my kitchen sink eating peach pie directly from the plate because I had not put a fork in front of him fast enough. "Celia likes that verse Dad marked," he'd said. "We thought Joanne could read it." I had paused with the fork in my hand. "Joanne? She's good at that kind of thing. Reading. Public speaking." I handed him the fork. "I've read in public before." The county tax office made me explain a utility deduction to 9 people and a security guard. He smiled, but not for long. "I just mean she won't get emotional." I wouldn't get emotional. "You got emotional at the tire place when they had Dad's name in the computer." That man called him Mr. Carl. Dad's middle name was Carl. His first name was Walter. If you're going to bring back the dead, you ought to bring back the right one. Evan had looked down at the pie, moving a peach slice through the syrup. "It would mean a lot if you brought the Bible." I said I would. I thought being asked to bring it meant I was being included. At 69, I should have known the difference between being included and being useful. But hope can make an old fool out of anybody. The chapel doors opened again, and Celia's cousin Tessa came through carrying a wooden box filled with folded programs. Tessa was 45, tall and freckled, with copper hair pinned into a style that looked one sneeze away from collapse. She wore a green dress and practical sandals beneath it. Marnie, thank God. She dropped onto the pew in front of me. Do you have a safety pin, aspirin, breath mint, sewing kit, sedative, or alternate personality? Which personality would you like? One who agreed to coordinate this wedding. It's a blessing. Then why have I been threatened by 3 florists? I opened my purse. I have aspirin and mints. No sedative? Only if you count butterscotch. I do. As I passed her the aspirin, she noticed where I was sitting. I thought you were up front. So did I. Before she could ask more, a woman's voice called her name from the entry hall. Coming, Tessa shouted. She lowered her voice. That's my mother using my full name with only 2 syllables. I'm in danger. She took the mints and hurried away. I watched her disappear behind the door and wished she had stayed. Not because I planned to tell her what Evan said. I wanted someone beside me who was still willing to assume there had been a mistake. Across the aisle, 2 of Celia's friends were arranging themselves in the front pew. Reed wore a dark blue suit with red socks. His wife, Laurel, had silver braids coiled at the back of her head and the calm expression of a woman who never arrived anywhere without tissues. Reed saw me and waved. I waved back. He pointed at the empty place beside him, then looked toward Evan as if asking permission. Evan said something I couldn't hear. Reed's hand dropped. That hurt almost more than the sentence. Evan came toward me again. This time he was accompanied by Joanne Bell, who had been Celia's mentor since Celia was 23. Joanne was 72 and beautiful in the polished way some women become after deciding softness is optional. Her white hair was cut close to her jaw and her lavender suit fit as if it had made an appointment with her. Marnie, she said warmly, I've been looking for you. Evan found me. Joanne laughed. Evan did not. She touched my wrist. I wanted to thank you for bringing Walter's Bible. That passage is perfect for them. I thought so too. Evan looked toward the chapel doors. Actually, we're cutting the reading. Joanne blinked. We are? We're running behind, and Reverend Moss said we need to keep it tight. The service hasn't started, I said. Pictures ran late. Joanne glanced at the Bible. It would only take 2 minutes. I already told him, Evan said. It's handled. Handled. That was one of the words he had picked up after meeting Celia. Before her, he said things were done, fixed, or taken care of. Now they were handled. He also used bandwidth when he meant patience and intentional when he meant expensive. Joanne must have seen something in his face because she nodded. All right, she said. It's your day. Our day, he corrected. Of course. He rested a hand lightly against Joanne's back and guided her toward the front. She went with him, then looked over her shoulder at me. I smiled. That was another habit I had mistaken for good manners. When someone hurts you in public, you smile so they won't feel bad for having seen it. The organ began in earnest. Conversations sank into whispers, then stopped. People filled the remaining pews, stepping around me with apologies and perfume. Nobody sat beside me. My purse and Walter's Bible could not have taken up that much room, but grief has a way of looking contagious. Reverend Moss entered from a side door. He was a round, cheerful man who had mislaid his solemn expression and decided to proceed without it. Evan stood near the altar, rubbing his thumb against the inside of his wedding band. He and Celia had been legally married at the courthouse 2 months earlier. This service was supposed to be the meaningful part. I wondered which part was supposed to mean something to me. The doors opened. Celia walked in alone. She wore an ivory dress with long sleeves and no veil. A small cluster of white flowers rested in her hands. She looked older than a bride in a magazine and more beautiful than one because her happiness had lines around its eyes. When she saw Evan, her whole face changed. Despite myself, I loved her for that. Celia had never been deliberately cruel to me. She brought good coffee when she visited and remembered that I hated scented candles. Once, after Walter died, she spent an entire afternoon helping me sort his shirts, then took every box to the donation center before I could unpack it again. But she also had the convenient faith of a person who believed the version of events that asked the least of her. Evan met her halfway down the aisle. They whispered something that made Celia laugh, and the room softened around them. I leaned left to watch. The column cut Evan in half. Reverend Moss spoke about second chances, deliberate love, and the courage to build a home from people who see us clearly. At the words, "build a home," Celia reached for Evan's hand. In the front pew, Joanne dabbed beneath one eye. I looked down at Walter's Bible. The funeral card had shifted. Walter's photograph showed him squinting into the sun, his mouth crooked as if he had just heard a joke he wasn't sure he should repeat. I slid the card back between the pages. When Reverend Moss asked the couple to acknowledge those who had guided them, Celia thanked Joanne, Tessa, Reed, and Laurel. She spoke about the people who had taught them that family could be chosen daily through honesty and care. Then Evan took the microphone. For one dangerous second, he looked directly at me. My heart rose like a fool answering the door. He thanked the same people. He thanked Celia for believing he was more than his worst season. He thanked Joanne for showing him what unconditional support looked like. He did not say my name. Laurel glanced back at me, quickly, almost apologetically. I lowered my eyes before she could offer me pity from the pew that had once been mine. The service ended with applause, though not the roaring kind. Stonebrook produced modest, church-approved applause, palms meeting politely while everyone remained aware of the cross above the altar. I stood and waited for the aisle to clear. Marnie. Marcy was hurrying toward me again. "They're doing family photographs in the courtyard," she said. "You'll want to go straight out." I picked up the Bible. "Which family?" She went very still. Then Tessa appeared beside her, holding a basket of rosemary sprigs and wearing one shoe. "There you are," Tessa said. "Evan wants everybody outside before the light changes. I'll be there." "Good. Also, if anyone asks, I was never barefoot in a house of worship. You're wearing one shoe. That's a theological gray area." She rushed off. I followed more slowly, the Bible tucked against my ribs. In the courtyard, Celia stood beneath an oak tree while friends gathered around her. Evan saw me at the chapel door. "Mom," he called, lifting one hand. "Give us a minute, okay? We'll get one with you right after this. Right after." I knew those words. I had built years of my life inside them. I stepped into the sunlight and waited. The photographer arranged Evan and Celia beneath the oak, then arranged them again 3 feet to the left, where the light was apparently more sincere. "Chins forward," she said. "Celia, soften your shoulder. Evan, hand lower, lower." That's her rib cage. "I know where her rib cage is," Evan said, then stopped greeting it like a business associate. Celia laughed and swatted his wrist. The photographer caught the moment and made a pleased sound. "Whatever you do, don't actually say anything," Reed told her. Celia said, "I married Evan." That produced a better laugh than the photographer could have ordered. People shifted in and out. Joanne posed with Celia alone, then with Celia and Evan. Tessa was pulled in. Reverend Moss wandered too close and got drafted. Marcy checked her watch with increasing desperation. Each time a group finished, Evan glanced toward me and raised one finger. 1 minute. I began to understand that 1 minute was not a measurement. It was a room where you put someone so you did not have to say no. Laurel peeled away from the group and came over. "Do you want me to hold that?" she asked, nodding at the Bible. "I've got it. It looks heavy. It's mostly paper." She smiled, then looked back at the tree. "I thought you were sitting with us." Evan rearranged things. Her face changed only slightly, but Laurel had never been good at pretending not to understand. She and Reed had been to my house for Thanksgiving the previous year. She knew where I sat at my own table. She knew I had made the pecan pie Evan bragged about as if he had discovered pecans. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "That I didn't ask." Before I could answer, the photographer called, "Laurel, I need you for one more." Laurel hesitated. "Go," I told her. "The light is changing." That was what everybody seemed afraid of. She returned to the oak. I watched another series of pictures. Celia with the women, Evan with the men, the couple with everyone who had attended their courthouse ceremony, the couple with the people who had helped decorate. A delivery van rattled past on the road. Marcy checked her watch again. The photographer lowered her camera. "I have to get the indoor details before I lose my second shooter," she said. Evan looked at me. "We still need my mom." "We can do it at the reception," Celia said. She sounded certain enough that I almost believed her. The photographer was already replacing a lens cap. Evan came over and kissed my cheek. He smelled like cedar cologne and the mint I had given Tessa. "You okay?" he asked. It was a remarkable question considering the amount of effort he had invested in not knowing the answer. "I need to get home before the food does. Tessa has the key." Tessa also spent 20 minutes wearing one shoe. His mouth twitched. "Fair. We'll take pictures there," Celia promised as she joined us. She squeezed my forearm. "I want one of just the three of us." Evan looked toward the others. Celia added, "And Joanne." There it was. Not a correction, but an expansion. "Of course," I said. I walked to my car while the remaining guests were gathered for a final wide shot. No one stopped me. I laid Walter's Bible on the passenger seat and secured it with the seatbelt. He would have enjoyed that. Walter had distrusted loose objects in moving vehicles. He once made me buckle in a watermelon because he said a sudden stop could turn it into a pink cannonball. When I told him watermelons were red, he said that was not the important part of the safety lesson. I kept one hand on the steering wheel and the other near the Bible all the way home. My house was 12 minutes from Stonebrook if you obeyed the speed limit, and 9 if you were transporting potato salad in July. I made it in 10. The catering van was already in the driveway. 2 women in black shirts carried aluminum trays through the side door. Tessa's key was still in the lock. Inside, the house looked prepared to impersonate a happier family. Cream tablecloths covered the rented tables. Small glass jars of rosemary and white roses sat along the mantel. On the piano stood a framed photograph of Walter and me at Evan's first wedding, turned so Walter was visible and the former bride was hidden behind an arrangement of greenery. I had told Celia she could remove that picture. She said she preferred to adapt it. The lead caterer met me in the kitchen. Her name was Dana, and she had the expression of a woman who had already prevented 3 disasters before noon. "Mrs. Cole, the refrigerator is full. There's another one in the garage. It's also full. That's where food goes. Mostly it's full of jars." I opened the garage refrigerator. She was right. Pickles, preserves, mustard, olives, 3 kinds of jam, and a bottle of champagne Walter bought for an anniversary we never reached. Dana held up a jar of peach preserves. "Can we consolidate?" My late husband believed combining jars invited botulism. Did he have medical training? He sold plumbing supplies. She considered that. So no, you can move the jars to the cooler. Thank you. I set the Bible on the small desk near the kitchen window, away from the drinks. Then I tied on the apron I had left hanging from a cabinet handle. Dana pointed at it. "You are not working. I live here. You are the mother of the groom. I'm also the only person who knows the downstairs toilet requires encouragement." She stared at me. "Lift the handle after you flush," I explained. "Maybe put up a sign. People resent written criticism." Before the guests arrived, I filled water pitchers, moved Walter's champagne to the back of the refrigerator, and carried my jars into the cooler. Activity made the house feel normal. A tray needed a spoon. The bathroom needed hand towels. A chair wobbled and could be fixed with folded cardboard. Problems with visible solutions have always appealed to me. Cars began lining the street. The front door opened and closed without pause. Reed entered carrying 2 floral arrangements. Laurel followed with my purse, which I had apparently left on the chapel pew. "You see," she said. The Bible was heavy. "Thank you." She glanced at my apron. "Take that off. I'm protecting the dress." "From what?" "Family." Reed laughed too loudly, then looked embarrassed by the word. Tessa came through behind them with the missing basket. "It was in Reverend Moss's car," she announced. "He claims spiritual intervention. People spread through my house, setting glasses on coasters they ignored and admiring photographs they did not recognize. Celia's cousin studied a picture of Evan at 19, when he had grown a mustache that looked penciled on. Is that him?" "No," I said. "That was a drifter we briefly sheltered." Evan heard me and groaned. "Mom, I told you the mustache was a mistake." Celia leaned close to the photograph. "I like it." "You're married now," I said. "You don't have to lie anymore." For a few minutes, we almost felt like ourselves. The photographer arrived and began taking pictures of rings, glasses, flowers, and the cake. I stood near the piano while she moved around the room. Twice I thought Evan was coming to get me. The first time, he wanted the bottle opener. The second, he asked where I kept extension cords. Our photograph never happened. Supper was served buffet style. There were more guests than chairs, although fewer than I had been told to expect. People ate on the porch, in the living room, and along the hallway bench. I carried plates to Joanne and Reverend Moss, then found my own place taken by a man named Peter, who knew Celia from a volunteer committee. He started to rise. "Don't," I said. "I'm not ready to sit." That was true. If I sat, somebody might notice I was alone. Tessa found me eating a crab cake over the sink. "There are napkins," she said. "I'm aware. And chairs. I own most of them." She looked toward the dining room. "What happened at the chapel? Your mother's centerpiece is leaning. My mother has been leaning since 1987. What happened?" Before I could answer, a spoon struck a glass in the living room. Evan stood beside the fireplace, one arm around Celia. Everyone pressed closer. I remained in the kitchen doorway with my plate. He thanked people for coming. He thanked Tessa for handling details, Reed for moving chairs, Laurel for assembling programs, and Joanne for standing beside us from the beginning. Joanne's eyes found mine. Evan's did not. Celia spoke next. She thanked me for opening my home and said, "Marnie always makes room for everybody." The guests turned toward me, smiling. I raised my glass because that was easier than explaining the difference between making room and being given one. After the toast, someone turned on music. Reed danced with Joanne between the tables. Tessa stole the decorative rosemary from the mantel and tucked it behind Peter's ears. Celia found me twice, kissed my cheek both times, and was pulled away before either of us said more than 3 words. Evan asked if I'd seen his phone. It was in his hand. By 10, the rented tables were stained with wine rings and icing. Dana packed the remaining food into labeled containers. Guests left carrying flowers, cake, and each other's suit jackets. Joanne hugged me at the door. "The house was lovely," she said. "Thank you. And you were very gracious." I could not tell whether it was praise or an apology. When the last car pulled away, the sudden quiet made the house seem startled. Chairs faced in every direction, crumpled napkins filled the sink. Someone had left a single high-heeled shoe beneath the piano, which felt like Tessa's day achieving symmetry. I found Walter's Bible still on the desk. A wet glass had been placed beside it, leaving a ring on the wood but missing the leather by an inch. I wiped the desk and carried the Bible upstairs. The next morning, I was filling a trash bag with rosemary sprigs when Evan let himself in through the side door. He wore yesterday's trousers and a wrinkled white shirt. His boutonniere was gone, but a green stain marked the pocket where it had been pinned. "Coffee?" he asked. "You know where it is." He poured a cup, opened the refrigerator, and began stacking leftover containers on the counter. Celia's still asleep. I figured I'd take some of this before everybody comes over. Everybody? To help clean up. I looked at the clock. It was almost 11. He removed the crab cakes, 2 salads, and most of the sliced beef. "Also, can we leave the chapel decorations here for a while?" he asked. "Our storage cage is packed. How long is a while?" "I don't know. A few months." He took my good glass container without asking and filled it with potatoes. "And Celia thought maybe we could keep doing the monthly suppers here," he continued. "It worked really well. Your place gives everybody room. Everybody. He shut the refrigerator with his hip. Oh, and I need you to hang on to our apartment key. Joanne has one, but she travels too much. If something happens, we need somebody reliable. He smiled then, the tired, trusting smile of a son who had never once wondered whether his mother might finally believe what he told her. I folded the top of the trash bag over my hand. No, I said. Evan paused with the glass dish of potatoes in his hands. No to which part? All of it. He waited for me to smile. I had trained him to wait. If I said something inconvenient, I usually softened it before anyone else had to. The refrigerator hummed behind him. You don't want leftovers? He asked. The food is yours. The dish is mine. He looked down as if the potatoes had put him in an awkward position. Fine. He tipped them into a plastic container, leaving a streak of butter along the counter. Then he set my dish in the sink. So, no to storing the decorations? Yes. Or no to supper? Yes. You can't answer yes to a no question. You seemed confused when I answered no. He stared at me over the kitchen island. In that moment, I could see him sorting through explanations for my behavior. Fatigue, hurt feelings, too much wine, though I had finished half a glass. What he could not consider was that I had understood him perfectly. Mom, it was one long day. It was. Everybody's exhausted. I'm not keeping your decorations. He placed both palms on the counter. Why are you acting like I asked you to adopt a horse? A horse would have to be invited inside. What does that mean? You let yourself in. I have a key. That isn't what I said. He pushed away from the counter and began pacing the narrow strip between the island and the breakfast table. Walter used to pace there during football games, 4 steps toward the window and 4 steps back. Evan had inherited the route, but not the patience. If this is about yesterday, it is. Then say that. Yesterday, you removed my Bible from the front pew and told me that pew was for the family you chose. His shoulders lifted, then fell. I was trying to get everything organized. You organized me out. That is not what happened. It happened to me. I was there. The seating got messed up. You moved the Bible yourself because Joanne needed an aisle seat. Joanne sat in the middle. That wasn't the final plan. She was in the photographs. He rubbed a hand over his face. Oh my God. The words were quiet, but I heard the weight inside them. Not guilt. Weariness. I was one more piece of cleanup after his beautiful day. You promised we'd take a picture at the house, I said. The photographer was busy. She photographed the cake from 7 angles. That's what we paid her to do. I didn't realize I was competing with frosting. You're not competing with anybody. I agree. Something in my voice made him stop pacing. I tied the garbage bag and leaned it against the cabinet. I am done competing, I said. If the people in that front pew are your family, then they can store the decorations. They can host the dinners. They can keep your key and answer the telephone when you need something handled. His eyes narrowed at the last word. So that's it? You're punishing us because you didn't get the seat you wanted? I'm changing what I do because you were honest about what I am. I was stressed. Stress doesn't invent a sentence like that. He opened his mouth, but the side door rattled before he could answer. Tessa entered carrying a cardboard tray of coffees. Reed and Laurel followed with black garbage bags and the obedient expressions of people who had been told cleanup would take 20 minutes. Tessa looked from Evan to me. Should we come back? No, I said. You're here to help. We are, Laurel said carefully. Reed held up the bags. I brought the deluxe kind. Drawstrings and everything. Put them by the pantry. They moved past us. Laurel touched my elbow as she went, the smallest possible acknowledgement that she had heard something without choosing a side. Evan lowered his voice. We are not doing this in front of everybody. I was doing it before they arrived. I'll call you later. He stacked the food containers in his arms. Your apartment key, I said. What about it? Wait here. I went upstairs before he could answer. My key ring lay in the dish on my dresser. Walter had given me the little brass fish attached to it after I spent 15 minutes trying to unlock someone else's car in a grocery store parking lot. He said I needed something distinctive. Evan's apartment key was newer than the rest. It still had the square white tag Celia wrote on in blue ink, EC. I slid it off the ring. When I returned, Reed was scraping dried icing from the dining table with a butter knife. Tessa had begun sorting the flowers into piles based on whether they looked alive, hopeful, or litigious. Evan stood near the door. I held out the key. "Mom, I don't need a performance. Take it." He shifted the food to one arm and snatched the key with the other. "Fine. And I'd like mine." His face went blank. "What? My house key? Seriously? You came in without knocking. I've been coming into this house without knocking since I could reach the lock. Yesterday you told me I wasn't your family. I did not say that. You made a distinction. I'm respecting it." He laughed once, without humor. "This is insane." Tessa became deeply interested in a dying rose. Evan set the containers on the floor, pulled his keys from his pocket, and attacked the split ring with his thumbnail. His hands shook enough to make the keys chatter. I nearly told him to stop. That was how quickly instinct rose. He was frustrated, so I wanted to rescue him from the difficulty of removing one key. He finally freed it and slapped it onto the side table. "There," he said. "Congratulations." No one moved. He picked up the food and left. The side door closed hard enough to rattle the window above the sink. Reed looked down at his garbage bags. "Drawstrings," he said weakly. Tessa gave him a warning look. "What? They're still very good bags." Laurel came into the kitchen. "Marnie, do you want us to go?" I looked at the room. Half-empty glasses, crushed rosemary, cake icing hardened to the table, chairs knocked out of line. The mess belonged to all of us, though not equally. "No," I said. "You came to help." "Help." We worked mostly in silence. Tessa found the chapel decorations stacked in my garage. Wooden signs, leftover candles, folded runners, 2 boxes of artificial greenery. "Are these leaving today?" she asked. "Yes." She studied my face, then nodded. "I'll put them in my car. You don't have to keep them." "I know. I have access to Evan's storage cage. He said it was full. It is if a person refuses to stack things higher than his shoulders." She carried the first box out without asking anything else. Laurel washed my glass dish and dried it by hand. Reed returned the rented chairs to the porch. By noon, the house looked less like a celebration and more like a place where one had occurred and been survived. Before she left, Laurel stood with one hand on the side door. "I didn't know what he said to you," she told me. "I didn't think you did." Reed asked why you weren't in front. Evan said you wanted to sit near the back because it was easier for you to leave if you got emotional. I held the dish towel very still. That was thoughtful of him. "Marnie, I didn't leave." "I know." She looked ashamed, which irritated me. Shame belonged to Evan, and even he had declined to carry it. "Thank you for telling me," I said. After they were gone, I picked up my house key from the side table. There was a pale scratch across the brass from Evan, forcing it off the ring. I added it to my own keys. The house was clean by 2. I should have been pleased. I had spent years believing clean rooms could improve any situation. Instead, every cleared surface made the silence more efficient. I took Walter's Bible downstairs and placed it on the end table beside my chair. Then I made tea and forgot to drink it. Celia called at 4. I knew it was her because she always let the phone ring exactly twice, hung up and called again if I did not answer. She said it prevented her from leaving awkward messages. I let the first call stop and answered the second. "Hi, Marnie." "Hello, Celia." There was a pause filled with faint traffic noise. Evan told me what happened. "Which part?" she breathed out. "Can we please not do that?" "I don't know what that is." The sharp little answers. "You called me." "I know, I'm trying." Her voice sounded tired, and my old reflex reached through the telephone, ready to reassure her that she had married into a family where nobody remained uncomfortable for long. I waited. She said, "Evan shouldn't have used those words." "No." but I think you're taking them in the worst possible way." "What is the better way?" He was overwhelmed. We had 8 people trying to make decisions. The flowers were late, Joanne was supposed to read, and Marcy kept changing where people stood. Marcy didn't move my Bible. No, but everything was chaotic. Celia. The pew was empty when Evan picked up the Bible. It was still empty when he told me why I couldn't sit there. The front was for the group participating in the ceremony. I was supposed to participate. The reading got cut. After I arrived, she went quiet. I heard a car horn through the phone. Then Celia said, "I wish you'd said something yesterday instead of waiting until today to take away everything. I gave you the supper I promised. We noticed. I opened my house, I fed your guests. I stood there while my son thanked another woman for unconditional support. That wasn't meant as an insult to you. Intent is getting a lot of exercise today." Her breath caught. Whether from anger or pain, I could not tell. "We love you," she said. "I'm not discussing whether you love me. What are we discussing?" "Access." That sounds like therapy language? No, therapy language would have more syllables. Despite herself, Celia made a short sound that might have been a laugh. It vanished quickly. "So we can't have supper at your house anymore. You can invite me to supper somewhere else. And the key? Give it to someone you chose. That's cruel." No. Cruel was making me sit behind a column with Walter's Bible while you celebrated the people who see you clearly. "Marnie, I didn't know he said that, but you knew where I was sitting." She had no answer. I closed my eyes. "I'm not asking you to choose between us," I said. "I'm asking you to stop expecting me to accept whatever place is left after everybody else is comfortable. Evan thinks you're done with him. He thinks that because he has never seen me stop doing things for him. Isn't that the same thing?" The question was honest enough to hurt. "No," I said. "It shouldn't be." After we hung up, I carried my cold tea to the sink. On the refrigerator, beneath a magnet shaped like a lobster, was the schedule I had written for the monthly suppers. My house on the first Friday, food assignments, allergies, phone numbers. I took it down. The paper left a clean white rectangle on the refrigerator door. For several minutes, I stood there looking at the place where the plan had been, already missing people who had made room for me only because I kept making room for them. The lobster magnet slid down the refrigerator and landed on the floor. I picked it up and put it in the junk drawer, which was where my kitchen stored objects that had disappointed me. The telephone rang before I could decide whether the blank rectangle looked better or worse. Ruth's name appeared on the screen. My sister did not believe in easing into a conversation. She believed greetings allowed guilty people time to prepare. "Evan called me," she said. "Hello, Ruth. He says you threw him out of the family. He has a family. They had reserved seating." "Oh, Lord. Did he mention the chapel?" "He said there was a misunderstanding. He understood me well enough when he moved my Bible." Silence. Ruth knew what that Bible meant. She had given Walter a magnifying sheet during the last year of his life because he refused to admit the print had gotten smaller only for him. "What did he say?" she asked. I told her. Another silence followed, longer than the first. "Well," she said, "that was ugly." Ruth's agreement was so reluctant it had texture. "Yes." "Did he apologize?" He explained. "That wasn't my question." "No." "All right, I'm coming over. You don't need to, I know. That's why it counts." She hung up. Ruth arrived 40 minutes later carrying a grocery bag and wearing pink linen pants that wrinkled if you looked at them too hard. She was 64 and had treated age as a series of dares. At 58, she bought red glasses. At 60, she got a small tattoo of a dragonfly on her shoulder, then complained for 3 years that nobody could see it. She put the grocery bag on the counter. I brought gin, olives, and bread. "What are we making?" "Decisions." She found 2 glasses. I put the bread away. "We should eat something," I said. "We spent 28 years eating before any difficult conversation. I'm trying a different system. You weren't in most of my difficult conversations." "No, but you told me about them over food." She poured a small amount of gin into each glass and added an olive. "This is not a martini," I said. "This is a beginning." We carried the glasses into the living room. Ruth took Walter's chair, as she always did, because she said dead men had no territorial rights. I sat across from her. "Tell me the whole thing," she said. I did, not quickly. I told her about Evan lifting the Bible, the empty pew, Joanne at the front, the canceled reading, the photograph that never happened, and the toast in my living room. I told her about the apartment key and the monthly suppers. Ruth listened without interrupting, which frightened me more than her interruptions. When I finished, she speared her olive with one fingernail. "You were right to give the key back. I didn't ask for a ruling. You called me when Walter bought that riding lawn mower. You always want a ruling. That mower was too large for the yard. It was too large for Rhode Island." I smiled despite myself. Ruth ate the olive. "But," she said, "there it is. You didn't just give back the key. You canceled the suppers, refused the storage, and took your house key off his ring while witnesses were standing in your kitchen. They came in during the conversation, and you continued it. I live here. That isn't an answer. It's the answer I have." She set her glass on the end table. "Marnie, I'm on your side. People only say that before moving several feet away from your side. I'm not moving. I'm asking whether you want a boundary or a weapon." The question struck hard enough that I looked toward the window. Outside, the last of the sunlight had caught the top branches of the maple. Walter used to say you could tell summer was tired when the leaves showed their pale undersides. "I want him to understand," I said. "That's not something you control. He should feel the difference. Probably. But if your goal is to make him feel it, don't dress it up as peace and quiet." I stood and took both glasses to the kitchen, though neither was empty. Ruth followed. "You are very annoying," I told her. "I came all this way to be accurate. It's 12 minutes. The pants make driving difficult." She leaned against the counter while I poured her gin into mine and mine down the sink. "I did not create this in one morning," I said. "Every time Evan needed something, he came here. When his marriage ended, he came here. When he couldn't sleep, he called me. When he couldn't pay the electric bill, you paid it. He was in trouble." "I know. What was I supposed to do?" Ruth shrugged. "Maybe not make rescue look like the same thing as love." I turned toward her. "That's a cruel thing to say. It may be. I've seen the two of you do this dance for 40 years. He falls down. You rush in before he knows whether he can stand. Then you wait for him to understand how much the rushing cost you. I never asked him to repay me, not in money." I gripped the edge of the sink. The truth, when spoken by a younger sister in pink pants, is especially offensive. Ruth's expression softened. "He was vicious yesterday," she said. "Don't mistake me. Whatever mess exists between you, he knew exactly where to stick the knife." "Then why am I the one on trial?" "Because you're the one in the room." That sounded like something Walter would have said. He had an irritating gift for making fairness seem unrelated to usefulness. I looked at the empty place on the refrigerator. "They called themselves the family they chose," I said. "Then this morning he wanted my house, my refrigerator, my time, and my key. Yes, I can love him without doing all of that. Yes, I can help when I choose instead of when he assumes. Yes, I can expect him to knock." Ruth nodded. "Then what are we arguing about? Whether you know how lonely you're going to be." I looked at her. She did not look away. The next morning I dressed for church at the same time I had every Sunday for 19 years. Blue dress, low shoes, silver earrings. I put Walter's Bible in my bag, then took it out again. The chapel was not our usual sanctuary, but Stonebrook belonged to the same church property. On summer Sundays, the early service was held there because the main sanctuary's air conditioning made a noise like a truck reversing. Walter and I had attended at 8:30 for years. I drove halfway there. At the light by the pharmacy, I could already see the Stone Bell Tower beyond the trees. My chest tightened before I had time to call it foolish. I turned right instead of left. The 11 o'clock service was held in the main sanctuary. I had never attended it except on Easter, when the building filled with lilies and people who parked creatively. The later congregation dressed more casually. A man in sandals handed me a bulletin and called me ma'am with great enthusiasm. I sat near the back, not because anyone placed me there. That distinction should have made the pew feel different. It did not. Reverend Moss preached about hospitality. I nearly laughed aloud. Hospitality had become one of those words that sounded generous until you realized it usually required a woman with access to folding chairs. Afterward, I avoided the coffee hour. I went to a diner 2 blocks from the church and ordered scrambled eggs at noon. The waitress looked at my dress. "Funeral?" she asked. "Church. Same shoes." She topped off my coffee. Her name tag said Darlene. She was perhaps my age, with a black apron and a silver streak through her hair. "You waiting for somebody?" she asked. "No." "Then I'll take the extra place setting." She did it without pity, sliding the unused cup and silverware to another table. I liked her immediately. My phone remained silent through lunch. I checked it twice, then felt ashamed and turned it face down. Evan did not call that Sunday or the next. Celia sent one text asking whether I had the name of the bakery that made the cake. I sent the name. She replied with a heart. The heart irritated me more than no reply would have. On the first Friday of the month, I bought too many tomatoes. I stood in the produce section with 6 of them in a bag before remembering I was not making salad for 12 people. I returned 4. At home, I cooked 1 chicken breast and set 1 place at the kitchen table. At 6:30, the hour people usually arrived, I heard a car door outside. I straightened before I could stop myself. The car belonged to my neighbor. At 7, I carried my plate to the living room and turned on a mystery program. I did not follow the plot. Every few minutes, I looked toward the hallway as if someone might come in, using a key he no longer had. At 8:15, a photograph appeared in the group message for the monthly supper. They were at Reed and Laurel's apartment. Reed held a serving spoon like a microphone. Tessa wore a paper napkin as a veil. Joanne sat beside Celia. Evan stood behind them with one hand on Celia's shoulder. The message beneath the photograph said, "We made it work." A second message arrived from Laurel. "Wish you were here, Marnie." No invitation had preceded it. I set the phone down. 5 minutes later, Evan sent me a separate message. "Do you know where Dad's socket set is?" I stared at the words until the screen went dark. Then I turned the phone back on and typed, "Garage cabinet, bottom left." He replied immediately. "Thanks, no hello. No mention of the photograph, no question about how I was." Information passed through the boundary because information was what I had taught him to expect from me. I took my plate into the kitchen. Above the garage was the guest room, though it had not hosted a guest in years. Evan's belongings filled the closet and half the dresser. Boxes from his old apartment, winter coats, a guitar he claimed humidity would damage, files he might need, shoes he did not wear but refused to discard. I climbed the stairs and opened the closet. One box was labeled Evan, important. Another said Evan, misc. A third said kitchen, though I knew it contained extension cords and tax records. I had protected those boxes from damp, heat, and his own indifference while he filled his apartment with a new life. My phone buzzed. Another message from him. "Can I come by tomorrow for the sockets?" I typed, "Yes, knock first." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then returned. "Sure." I pulled an empty laundry basket from the top shelf and set it on the bed. The room did not become less his simply because I had taken back a key. His unfinished decisions occupied every drawer. I opened the closet wider and began counting boxes. There were 14 boxes, 3 garment bags, 2 lamps, 4 framed prints, 1 guitar, a bread maker without its paddle, and a vacuum cleaner Evans said worked if you held the cord at an angle. I wrote the numbers on the back of an envelope, then realized I was inventorying my own resentment. The bread maker had been a wedding gift from his first marriage. He kept it because it was expensive and never used it because looking at it made him sad. I had allowed that logic to occupy a shelf for 5 years. I went to bed without moving anything, At 10 the next morning, someone knocked hard enough to imply criticism. I opened the side door. Evan stood on the step in jeans and a gray t-shirt, holding an empty canvas tool bag. You said knock. I did. You don't have to punish the door. He walked past me before I invited him in, but at least he waited for the opening. Morning, he said. Coffee? No. You always want coffee. Maybe I don't want to owe you a beverage. That seems manageable. He stopped near the kitchen table and looked at me. The skin beneath his eyes was dark. Evan had never been good at carrying anger overnight. It sat visibly on him, wrinkling the edges. Where are the sockets? Garage cabinet, bottom left, like I told you. He went through the utility room. I heard cabinet doors open, metal scrape, and one of Walter's old coffee cans fall over. The garage had been Walter's kingdom, though kingdom was too elegant a word for a place with pegboard walls and 3 broken fans he intended to repair. Evan returned, carrying a red metal case. Found them. I heard. He looked toward the ceiling. What were you doing in the guest room last night? My bedroom was across the hall. He must have remembered the room's position from the 47 boxes I helped him carry up there over the years. Counting your things. Why? There are 14 boxes. So? And furniture, clothes, a guitar, and a vacuum cleaner that requires a personal relationship with the cord. He set the socket case on the kitchen table. I don't have room at the apartment. You have a storage cage. It's full. Tessa disagrees. His eyes sharpened. You talked to Tessa about my storage. She moved your chapel decorations there. Of course she did. What does that mean? It means everybody is discussing us. People witnessed us. Because you made sure they did. He leaned against the table, folding his arms. What do you want, Mom? I want you to collect your belongings within 30 days. His arms dropped. You're evicting my boxes? They don't pay rent. That's not funny. It was a little funny. No, it wasn't. The envelope lay on the counter behind me. I resisted the urge to show him my list. Producing evidence would turn a boundary into a prosecution, and Ruth would somehow sense it from 12 minutes away. I need the room, I said. For what? I don't know yet. So you don't need it. I need it to stop being a warehouse for decisions you don't want to make. His face flushed. You told me I could keep that stuff here. I did. For as long as I needed. I don't remember promising forever. You didn't put an expiration date on it. I am putting one on now. He laughed and turned away. This is unbelievable. 30 days is reasonable. For 14 boxes? In our apartment? Some of them contain things you haven't looked at since you brought them here. You don't know that. The tape has my handwriting. He paced to the window and back. Do you hear yourself? You're going through every corner of the house looking for ways to push me out. I didn't go through anything. I opened the closet. You're erasing me because you're mad about a pew. It was a pew, a Bible, a canceled reading, a missing photograph, and a sentence you still haven't apologized for. There it is again. Yes, Evan. When something remains unresolved, it tends to remain in the conversation. It was seeding. It was ranking. To you, to everybody. That was the point of putting them in front. He dragged a hand through his hair. You have to be the most important person in every room. I stared at him. He had surprised me before. He surprised me when he learned to make bread during his bad year, then surprised me again by quitting the day his loaf came out perfectly. He surprised me when he asked Celia to marry him after insisting he would never marry again. This surprise felt different. I was behind a column, I said. That's not what I mean. What do you mean? You help and help and help, and then you stand there waiting for everybody to recognize you as the person who helped. Recognition is not the same as a front pew at your son's wedding. Blessing. Oh, thank goodness. I would hate to be unreasonable. He looked away. I lowered my voice. Did you tell Reed and Laurel I wanted to sit in the back? His head came around. Who said that? Laurel. She misunderstood. She repeated a complete sentence. I said you might be more comfortable there. You told her I wanted an easy exit in case I got emotional. You do get emotional. Everyone at that service got emotional. Joanne wiped her eyes in the front. That's different. Why? Because she wasn't going to make the day about herself. The kitchen went quiet. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming. Evan's face changed before mine did. He knew he had gone too far. I saw the knowledge arrive, and I waited for the apology that should have followed it. He looked down at the socket case. I didn't mean, no, you did. I mean, you've been unhappy about the blessing from the beginning. I asked why you needed to spend money on a ceremony after you were already married. You called it unnecessary. I called the rented chair covers unnecessary. You questioned every decision. You asked me what I thought. And you always had an answer. That's generally what people are hoping for when they ask a question. No, sometimes they're hoping you'll be happy for them. The shame in his voice softened something in me against my will. That was the contradiction of loving Evan. He could wound me, and I would still notice where he was wounded. I was happy for you, I said. I am happy you found Celia. You don't like her family. They aren't her family. They're her friends. His expression hardened. There. That right there. What? You decide which relationships count. I didn't decide. I repeated the distinction you made to me. Chosen family is still family. I never said it wasn't. You said Joanne wasn't my mother. I did not say that. You didn't have to. I gripped the back of a chair. He had turned the argument just enough that I could see myself through his eyes. The mother keeping score, the widow guarding old definitions, the woman whose generosity always placed her at the center of the table. The picture was unfair. It was not entirely false. I don't object to Joanne loving you, I said. I object to you using her love to humiliate me. No one was trying to humiliate you. You lied about why I sat in the back. I was trying to avoid drama. You created it, then lied, so I would look like the source. He picked up the socket set. 30 days, I said. He shook his head. I heard you. Will you come for the boxes? I said I heard you. That isn't an answer. He met my eyes. Neither is no when somebody asks for a key. He walked out. This time, he closed the door gently. The gentleness hurt worse. I stood in the kitchen until the garage door rattled. Evan had left the bottom cabinet open. I went out and closed it. The empty space where the red socket case had been was outlined in dust. Walter had taught Evan to use those tools after he moved into his first apartment. Not when he was young, as Walter sometimes claimed, but when Evan was 31 and called because his bathroom faucet would not stop dripping. Walter drove over with the socket set, and I followed with sandwiches. Evan had fixed the faucet while Walter supervised, and I cleaned a refrigerator nobody asked me to clean. We'd all believed we were helping. I spent the afternoon carrying Evan's boxes from the closet to one side of the guest room. I did not open them. I did not arrange them by importance or write new labels. I lined them against the wall and left a clear path from the door to the window. The room looked smaller with the clutter acknowledged. On Monday, I bought new sheets for the bed. They were yellow, a color Evan disliked. The purchase was petty. I knew it while placing the package in my cart. I bought them anyway. I washed the sheets, made the bed, and moved the guitar into the hall. Then I stood in the doorway admiring the room as if color alone could make it mine. The doorbell rang. Not the side door. The front bell, which had a formal chime Walter called the governor's arrival. Joanne stood on the porch. She wore white trousers, a striped blouse, and dark sunglasses. Without the lavender suit, she looked less ceremonial and more tired. In one hand, she held a bakery box tied with string. I brought lemon cake, she said. That is a serious amount of cake. I wasn't sure whether this was an apology, a visit, or an interrogation. So you bought enough for all three? Yes. I stepped aside. Joanne entered and looked toward the living room. Where would you like me? The question was too careful. Kitchen, I said. I made coffee while she untied the box. Inside was a lemon loaf covered in white glaze. Celia told me you liked this. Celia remembers what people like. Joanne glanced at me. That sounded almost complimentary. It was. We sat at the kitchen table. She cut 2 thick slices and pushed one toward me. I didn't know, she said, about the Bible, about any of it. I picked up my fork. Evan told us you preferred sitting farther back because Walter's memory might make the service difficult. He told me the front pew was for the family they chose. Joanne closed her eyes. For the first time since I had met her, she looked every one of her 72 years. Tessa said he moved Walter's Bible, she murmured. Yes. And you were supposed to read? Originally. I thought Reverend Moss cut the passage before you arrived. No. She looked toward the living room, where the blue Bible rested on the end table. I sat in your place. He gave you that place. I accepted it. You didn't know what it cost. Joanne's mouth tightened. Not knowing has become a very popular defense. I put down my fork. What do you want from me? I'm not sure. She folded her hands. Perhaps I wanted you to tell me I did nothing wrong. I don't think that would help either of us. A small, rueful smile crossed her face. No, she said. I don't suppose it would. She looked at the untouched cake on my plate. I love them, Marnie. Both of them. I know, but I will not be used as proof that someone else is disposable. I held her gaze. Then tell Evan, I said. Don't come here and make an alliance with me against him. I have enough family trouble without borrowing yours. Joanne sat back, surprised. Then she laughed, not loudly, but honestly. I see why he's afraid of you. The words could have offended me. Instead, I asked, does he say he is? No. She lifted her coffee. That is how I know. That is an irritating answer. It's also true. Joanne cut another piece of cake, though neither of us had finished the first. Evan talks about you often, she said. I doubt that. He does. He tells stories about Walter, but you're always in them. You're making coffee, finding a receipt, bringing the thing everyone forgot. The stories don't work without you, yet I can be edited out of the photograph. Yes. She said it without comfort. I studied her. What is he afraid of? Being seen as dependent. Everybody depends on somebody. Evan thinks dependence has witnesses. That sounded like therapy language, but I did not say so. Joanne ran one finger around the rim of her cup. When he first started coming to our suppers, he wouldn't accept anything. If Reed paid for dinner, Evan found a reason to bring him a gift the next week. If I drove him somewhere, he put gas in my car without asking. Celia said he was generous. I thought he was terrified of owing people. He never minded owing me. You were already holding the debt. I pushed my chair back. Joanne raised a hand. I'm not saying you used it against him. You're only saying it was there. Yes. I carried my cup to the sink, rinsed it, and placed it in the drying rack. Activity again. A cup did not accuse anybody. When his first marriage ended, I said, he could barely get dressed. He stayed in my guest room for 11 months. Some days he didn't speak until supper. Was I supposed to leave him alone because help might embarrass him later? No. I did not keep a tally. No. He lived here. He ate here. He used my car when his was in the shop. I paid his electric bill because he forgot to pay it and the power was shut off. That is what happened. Joanne watched me from the table. I believe you. But. No but. There is always a but. Then this one belongs to you. I turned off the faucet harder than necessary. She was silent for a moment. Marnie, I am not the woman in the front pew because I loved Evan better, she said. I'm the woman in the front pew because loving me never made him feel ashamed. The kitchen seemed to tilt, though nothing moved. I leaned against the counter. Joanne looked down at her hands. That is his failure, not yours. But it may explain why he needed everyone to see me there. I pictured Evan carrying the Bible, the set of his jaw, the careful way he aligned it with the pew. He had not been removing an object. He had been arranging evidence. That doesn't make it less cruel, I said. No, understanding cruelty is not the same as forgiving it. More therapy language. I've paid for a great deal of therapy. I intend to use the vocabulary. That pulled a laugh from me. Joanne smiled, but her eyes remained sad. I will speak to him, she said. Speak for yourself. I understand. Don't tell him I recruited you. I wasn't aware you possessed that power. I'm serious. So am I. I don't intend to scold him on your behalf. I intend to make it clear that I will not be displayed as his better family. You may lose your front row privileges. I have survived worse seating. When she stood to leave, she wrapped half the lemon loaf in waxed paper and handed it to me. You bought this, I said, and now I'm giving it to you. That makes it hospitality instead of emotional bribery. I don't think that's how bribery works. It's cake, Marnie. Don't make it carry more than it can. At the door, she glanced toward the stairs. Are those Evan's things in the hallway? The guitar is. Celia said he's collecting boxes. Eventually, he told her you were clearing out his room. It has not been his room for 18 years. That is not how he described it. I'm shocked. Joanne opened the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Celia doesn't think you're disposable. She thought I was comfortable behind a column. Celia has a talent for believing the least disruptive explanation. That must be restful, not forever. After she left, I ate the lemon cake standing at the kitchen counter. It was very good, which was inconvenient. I wanted Joanne's visit to leave a bitter taste. Instead, it left sugar on my fingers and a sentence I could not stop hearing. Loving me never made him feel ashamed. Evan arrived that Thursday for the guitar. He knocked once and waited on the step. I opened the door, and he said, I'm here for the guitar, as though I might have mistaken him for a missionary. It's in the hall. He picked it up. The case was dusty along one edge. You could wipe that, he said. You could. He looked at me, almost smiled, and did not. The following Monday, he collected 2 boxes and 1 lamp. On Saturday, he brought Reed's hatchback and took 4 more boxes. Reed greeted me cheerfully, carried everything I pointed to, and stayed out of the conversation with the concentration of a man defusing a bomb. Each visit was efficient. Evan knocked. I opened the door. He took what belonged to him. Neither of us mentioned the chapel, the key, or Joanne. The guest room became visible in sections. A patch of carpet appeared where the guitar had leaned. The closet door closed properly after 2 garment bags left. The yellow sheets looked almost cheerful. I had imagined the clearing would feel like relief. Instead, each empty space seemed to announce that Evan had listened when I told him to remove himself. Near the end of the month, Celia came alone. She wore loose black pants and a pale green blouse. Her hair was tied back, and there were shadows beneath her eyes. I'm here for the vacuum cleaner, she said. I was hoping he'd abandon that. He says it has sentimental value. It tried to catch fire in 2019. He didn't mention that. He wasn't the one holding it. I led her upstairs. The vacuum stood beside the bread maker and the last 3 boxes. Celia pulled on the handle, but the machine caught against the doorframe. Turn it sideways, I said. She did, then stopped in the hall and pressed one hand against the wall. What's wrong? Nothing. That word is carrying too much. She closed her eyes. Give me a second. I took the vacuum from her and set it upright. Up close, her face looked gray. Sit down. I'm fine. Sit before you make me catch you. I'm not going to faint. Then sitting will be a pleasant surprise. She sat on the edge of the guest bed. I went downstairs for water. When I returned, she was examining the yellow sheets. Evan hates yellow, she said. I know, that's petty. I know. She accepted the water and drank half of it. What is it? I asked. Celia looked toward the window. My hip. Your hip made you look like you were about to pass out? The pain does sometimes. I sat beside her, leaving space between us. She had mentioned hip trouble before, but only as a reason she avoided long walks. Celia disliked discussing her body unless it had done something amusing. How bad? Bad enough that I'm having it replaced. I turned toward her. When? Next month. Have you told Evan? He went to the appointment. And he is treating it like a military landing. That sounds like him when he's frightened. She rotated the glass between her palms. The surgeon says it's routine. 2 nights in the hospital, then home, a walker for a while, physical therapy. No stairs if I can help it. You live on the 2nd floor. There's an elevator, except when there isn't. Our building manager says it's been repaired. Your building manager also says the laundry room is ventilated. A tired smile crossed her face. We may stay at Joanne's for the first week. Her guest room is downstairs. That makes sense. Evan thinks so. But you don't? I don't know. Joanne has the space, but she has that conference in Milwaukee 4 days after I get out. Tessa can take a couple nights. Laurel offered meals. Reed offered something involving resistance bands that I declined. And Evan? He'll be there. Then what are you worried about? Celia looked at me. It was not an accusing look. That made it harder. He's never been good when someone he loves is in pain, she said. He tries to fix it. He gets angry when it can't be fixed quickly. I remembered Walter's last months when Evan brought gadgets, supplements, special pillows, and articles printed in large type. When Walter worsened anyway, Evan stopped visiting for 6 days. He said work was busy. You want me to help him help you, I said. I didn't come here to ask that, but you hoped I would offer. She looked down at the water. Yes. The honesty landed between us. I could have punished her with silence. Part of me wanted to. It would have been clean and deserved, and exactly the kind of thing Ruth would identify over gin. I can come sit with you one afternoon, I said. I can bring supper. If you need me, not if Evan needs managing, you may call. Celia's shoulders loosened, then tightened again. What about the rest? The rest is a conversation you need to have with your husband and the people in your front pew. That was sharp. Yes. Was it necessary? I don't know yet. She nodded slowly. That's at least honest. I carried the vacuum downstairs while Celia followed one step at a time. At the side door, she hugged me. It was an awkward embrace, partly because of the vacuum and partly because neither of us knew whether we were making peace. That evening, Evan called. It was the first time I had heard his voice over the telephone since the blessing. Celia told you about the surgery, he said. Yes. She said you offered to help, one afternoon and a meal. He was quiet. We're trying to put together a schedule, he said. Joanne can't do the first week after all, and Tessa's work is a mess. Laurel can bring food, but she can't stay overnight. I waited. He cleared his throat. You're good at organizing this kind of thing. There it was. Not an apology, not an invitation, but the old door reopening because trouble had arrived. I am, I said. So could you coordinate everybody? No. His breath came hard through the receiver. Mom, this is Celia's surgery. I know, this isn't about me. No, I said. That is why you should stop making it my test. I'm not testing you, Evan said. You're asking me to prove I care by doing the same work I just said I would no longer do. I'm asking for help. No, you're asking me to manage everyone else's help because you're good at it. So are you. I have a job. I remember those. That's not what I meant. It's what you said. He exhaled into the phone. I could picture him walking from the living room window to the kitchen and back, carrying the call with him as if motion could produce a better mother. What exactly are you willing to do? He asked. The word willing irritated me. It made kindness sound like an item under negotiation. Still, the question was fair. I can bring supper the evening she comes home. I can sit with her the following Wednesday from 1 until 5, 4 hours. Yes. And that's it? If she needs something specific, she can ask. She shouldn't have to keep asking people while she's recovering. You're right. You should ask them. They have their own lives. So do I. You're retired. I did not retire from being a person. Silence gathered on the line. Then he said, Family doesn't give you office hours. You gave family assigned seating. The sentence left my mouth fast and bright. For half a second, it felt satisfying. Then I heard Ruth in my head asking whether I wanted a boundary or a weapon. That was cheap, Evan said. Yes, I admitted. It was. My agreement threw him off. But I'm still not coordinating the schedule, I continued. Call Joanne. Call Tessa, Laurel, and Reed. Tell each one exactly what you need. If there are gaps after that, decide how you and Celia will handle them. And if we can't, then ask me about a specific gap. Don't hand me the whole problem. He did not answer. Evan, I heard you. The phrase came back in his voice with enough resemblance to make us both notice. I'm not trying to hurt Celia, I said. I know. It was the first generous thing he had given me in weeks. He hung up without saying goodbye, but I held on to those 2 words. The group message began at 7 the next morning. Evan had titled it Celia Recovery Team, which made her hips sound like a collapsed building. He listed dates, transportation needs, meals, overnight stays, and physical therapy appointments. Then he wrote, Mom, can you fill in names and confirm everyone? I stared at the message while eating toast. Before I could respond, Reed volunteered to drive Celia home from the hospital. Tessa said she could cover the first night, but not the second. Laurel offered 3 dinners and asked about food restrictions. Joanne reminded everyone she would be in Milwaukee from Thursday through Sunday, but could stay Monday night. Messages multiplied. Does she have a walker? Who is picking up prescriptions? Can she have garlic? Is the elevator reliable? Do you mean this Thursday or next Thursday? Reed proposed color coding. Tessa responded, no. Evan wrote, Mom knows how to organize meal schedules. I wiped butter from my thumb and typed, Evan is coordinating. Please direct questions to him. The message sat there for almost a minute. Then Tessa added a thumbs up. Reed added 2. Laurel asked Evan whether Celia could have garlic. I felt both victorious and ashamed. By noon, Evan had built a schedule. It was not elegant. He assigned Joanne to a night she had already said she would be away, and he scheduled physical therapy at the same time Reed was supposed to bring lunch. Celia corrected both errors. No one died from the inefficiency. The evening before surgery, Celia called me. Evan has labeled the kitchen cabinets, she said. With what? Words. That is generally how labeling works. He labeled the cabinet that says plates with a note that says plates. He's nervous. He also put arrows on the floor showing the path from the bedroom to the bathroom, in case your apartment changes shape overnight. I asked him that. He didn't laugh. I could hear tape tearing in the background. Are you frightened? I asked. Yes. The answer came without decoration. I sat down at the kitchen table. What part? Waking up in pain, not waking up. The surgeon sneezing, my leg being the wrong length, all of it. Those seem like separate fears. I'm multitasking. Did you tell Evan? He gave me a printout of success rates. That sounds like him. He means well, I know. On her end, something crashed. Celia called. I'm fine, away from the receiver. Evan's voice answered, I didn't ask. He dropped a roll of tape, she told me. Dangerous. I may not survive the preparations. We spoke for 20 minutes about everything except the chapel. Celia asked whether I had ever had surgery. I told her about having my appendix removed at 34 and Walter bringing me a milkshake before the doctor allowed food because he believed hospital rules were suggestions written by pessimists. Did you drink it? She asked. Of course. Were you sick? Immediately. She laughed, then groaned. Don't make me laugh, my hip hurts. After tomorrow, you can blame everything on the new one. Before we hung up, she said, You don't have to come to the hospital. I wasn't planning to. Oh. The smallness of the word made me regret my tone. I don't want to turn your surgery into a family demonstration, I said. Evan will keep me updated. I'd like to see you when I'm home. I'll bring supper, something with garlic. I saw the messages. The surgery began before sunrise. I woke at 5:30 without an alarm and lay in bed watching the ceiling change from black to gray. At 7, Evan sent. Checked in. At 8:12. Going back now. At 10:40, surgeon says it went well. I did not know how tightly I had been holding my phone until my fingers hurt when I set it down. I typed, "Thank God. Tell her I love her." He replied, "I will." That afternoon, I made chicken soup. It was unnecessary because Celia would not come home until the next day and Laurel had already claimed the first meal. I froze mine in 4 containers and labeled them with the date, though I had recently developed opinions about labels. Evan sent a photograph of Celia sitting upright in a hospital bed. She looked pale and furious. Her hair stood up on one side and a plastic cup rested on her tray. Her message beneath it said, "They gave me broth without garlic." I laughed aloud in the empty kitchen. When she came home, the elevator worked. Reed sent photographic proof to the group. Celia in a wheelchair making a royal wave, while Evan stood behind her holding 3 bags, a walker, and a plant somebody had sent. That evening, Laurel delivered baked pasta. The next day, Tessa brought sandwiches and stayed while Evan picked up medication. On the 3rd day, Joanne flew to Milwaukee. Reed drove Celia to physical therapy and returned her to the wrong entrance of the building. He claimed all brick walls looked alike. The system worked, though it squeaked. Then Tessa developed a fever and canceled her overnight stay. Evan posted the news in the group message at 4:20. "Can anyone stay tonight? I have to be at work early and Celia isn't steady alone yet." Laurel had taken cold medicine and could not drive. Reed had an early meeting. Joanne was still away. The typing dots appeared beside 3 names, vanished, and appeared again. My telephone rang. I let it ring twice before answering. "Mom," Evan said, "we have a gap. I need someone from 9 tonight until 7 in the morning. That is specific." "Yes." He waited. I looked around my kitchen. The soup containers were stacked in the freezer. My purse hung on the chair. I had no plans except sleep. "I can stay until midnight," I said. "You can sleep from 9 until then, and then you take over. I have to leave at 6. Then you'll get 6 hours. I need to function tomorrow. So does Celia. That's why I'm asking. And I am offering 3 hours. Why not stay?" Because I could. Because it would be easy. Because once I entered the apartment with an overnight bag, Evan would hand me the worry he had been carrying and sleep like someone whose mother had returned to her proper job. Because I said I would not become the default, I answered, "This isn't default. Tessa is sick. It becomes default when every gap leads to me." His voice tightened. "You're really going to leave at midnight to make a point? I'm going to sit with your wife for 3 hours so you can sleep." My wife. Yes, not your daughter-in-law? Of course she's my daughter-in-law. You said Joanne wasn't family. I said she wasn't Celia's family when you used the word to exclude me. I was angry. So your definitions change when you need them. Apparently yours do too. Tonight I'm family again. He went silent. That was the wound beneath every practical question. Neither of us could touch it without pushing. "I'll be there at 8:30, I said. "Go to bed when I arrive, set an alarm for midnight." "Fine. Does she need food?" "No." Laurel brought enough pasta to sedate a construction crew. "Medication?" "I have a chart." "Of course you do." He almost laughed. I heard it stop. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." I packed 1 container of soup anyway. At 8:25, I stood outside Evan and Celia's apartment with the soup in one hand and my purse in the other. I could hear him moving inside before I knocked. The door opened immediately. Evan looked worse than Celia had in the hospital photograph. His hair was unwashed, his shirt was inside out, and a strip of blue painter's tape clung to the leg of his sweatpants. "You labeled yourself," I said. He looked down, pulled off the tape, and stepped aside. The apartment smelled like baked pasta, rubbing alcohol and roses. Vases covered every flat surface. A walker stood in the center of the living room. Arrows made from blue tape pointed down the hall. Celia sat in a recliner with her operated leg elevated and an ice pack strapped to her hip. Her face was drawn with pain, but she lifted one hand when she saw me. "Tell him the arrows are insane," she said. "They brought me directly to you. Traitor." I set the soup on the counter. Evan picked up a spiral notebook from the coffee table. "Her next medication is at 9, he said. She needs ice changed at 10, and she has to walk to the kitchen and back before bed. If she gets dizzy, I had surgery, Evan, Celia said. I was not replaced with a difficult houseplant. He ignored her. The surgeon's number is on the refrigerator. The physical therapist said she should not twist. She says she can get to the bathroom alone, but she can't. I can, Celia said. You almost fell this morning. I dropped a sock. You tried to pick it up. It was a good sock. I held out my hand for the notebook. Evan gave it to me. For 1 second, neither of us let go. His eyes were bloodshot. Beneath the fear and exhaustion, I saw relief already beginning. Midnight, I said. His fingers released the notebook. Midnight, he agreed. He went toward the bedroom, then turned back. Mom? Yes? Don't let her convince you she can do more than she can. Celia raised her voice. I can hear both of you. I know, I said. Evan stood there another moment, caught between gratitude and the terror of trusting me without surrendering to me. Then he closed the bedroom door. Celia waited until his footsteps stopped. He cried in the hospital bathroom, she said. I looked at the closed door. Did he know you heard him? No. Then I didn't hear that. She adjusted the ice pack and winced. He thinks needing people is the same as failing, she said. I've been told. Joanne? Joanne. Celia looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded toward the chair beside her. Sit down, Marnie. For once, nobody needs you to organize anything. I sat. At 9, I gave her the medication exactly as Evan had written it. At 10, I changed the ice. At 10:15, she cried without warning, silent tears running toward her ears while she stared angrily at the ceiling. I did not tell her it would be all right. I held her hand and let the pain be true. Celia turned her face away from me. I hate this, she whispered. I know. No, I mean all of it. The pain, the walker, Evan watching me breathe like he expects me to stop, everybody discussing my bathroom schedule. Your bathroom schedule has become a community project. She laughed once, and the laugh broke into another sob. I moved the ice pack aside and rubbed the back of her hand. Her fingers were cold. Do you want me to wake Evan? No. Do you need more medication? No. Then you're allowed to hate it for a while. She squeezed my fingers hard enough to hurt. Walter had cried only twice during his illness. Once when he could no longer drive, and once when I cut his food without asking. The second time, I had mistaken help for mercy. He looked down at the little pieces of chicken on his plate and said, I'm still in here, Marnie. After that, I asked. Celia's tears slowed. I offered her a tissue, but did not wipe her face. Thank you, she said. For the tissue? For not telling me to be positive. I have never trusted positive people after 10 at night. She blew her nose. Joanne says pain is information. Joanne has not had her hip replaced. She had a facelift 6 years ago. That is excellent information. Celia gave me a startled look. She told you? No. Joanne's ears are 12 years younger than her neck. Celia began laughing, then grabbed her side. Stop. You're terrible. You needed a distraction, not internal bleeding. She breathed carefully until the pain eased. I replaced the ice pack and checked Evan's notebook. His handwriting became smaller and more severe as the page went on. At the bottom, he had written, Remind her she is doing well. I closed the notebook before Celia saw it. You really do know what to do, she said. I know how to sit in a chair. You make it look more complicated. That is part of my mystique. She studied me. I knew something was wrong at the chapel. The room changed without changing. The refrigerator motor clicked off. A car passed below, its headlights moving across the ceiling. What did you know? I asked. I saw where you were sitting. Yes. Evan said Walter's Bible was making the front too difficult for you. He said you wanted to be near the back in case you needed air. Did that sound like me? No. Her answer came too fast to be comfortable. Then why did you believe him? I didn't exactly. That sounds convenient. It was. She adjusted herself in the recliner and winced. I had spent the whole morning putting out fires. The florist was late. My dress had torn under the arm. Joanne and Tessa were arguing about who had the rings. When Evan said he handled the seating, I decided to let it be handled, even when you saw me behind a column. Yes. I waited. Celia swallowed. I liked the front pew the way it was, she said. Everyone I wanted was there. I didn't ask who had to move because asking might have required me to change it. There was no defense in the words. That made them harder to strike. You promised a photograph, I said. I forgot. He didn't. I know. Do you? Yes. Now I do. I looked toward the closed bedroom door. Why now? Because for the last week, Evan has called everyone we love and asked for help one person at a time. He hated every call. He apologized before asking. He offered to repay people for things that don't have a price. He spent 40 minutes trying to trade shifts with Tessa as if we were running a factory. That sounds exhausting. It is. And I realized he has never had to do that with you. You notice the need before he names it. That does not excuse what he said. No. Or what you allowed. No. She closed her eyes for a moment. I am sorry, Marnie. The words did not repair the chapel. They did not move my Bible, restore the reading, or place me in a photograph that had already been taken. But they entered the room without demanding that I make them easier to carry. I believe you, I said. Do you forgive me? Not tonight. Her eyes opened. All right. You're in pain. I don't want you apologizing because I'm holding the ice. I'm not. Then the apology will still be true later. She nodded. At 11, I helped her stand. Evan's instructions said she was to walk to the kitchen and back. Celia gripped the walker, pushed herself upright, and made a sound through her teeth. Don't pull on the walker, I said. Push from the chair. I know. Then do the thing you know. You and Evan are more alike than either of you deserves. That is not useful right now. Pain is information. Pain has made you rude. She shuffled toward the kitchen. I stayed beside her without touching her. Every instinct in me wanted to take her elbow, guide the walker, move the rug, tell her where to place each foot. Instead, I asked, Do you want my hand? Not yet. At the kitchen entrance, she stopped. Now. I gave it to her. She leaned on me for 3 steps, then released me herself. When we returned to the recliner, she was shaking with effort. I helped settle the ice pack and tucked a blanket over her feet. At 11:50, I knocked on the bedroom door. Evan opened it wearing his inside-out shirt and a red mark across one cheek from the pillow. What happened? Nothing happened. Is she okay? She walked, took her medication, cried, laughed, insulted me, and nearly reached the kitchen without help. That's good. It is. He looked at the clock. You're leaving? At midnight. You could stay another hour. I could. His expression closed. I'm going to sleep at home, I said. You have had 3 hours. You can have coffee and take the next shift. Right. Celia called from the living room. She is not abandoning me. Stop making that face. I'm not making a face, he called back. You are. I can hear it. I picked up my purse. Evan followed me to the door. Did she get dizzy? No. Did she eat? Half a piece of toast. Did you write it down? No. He looked toward the notebook. Then I'll forget. You will remember that your wife ate half a piece of toast. That's easy for you to say. I put my hand on the doorknob. Thank you for coming, he said. You're welcome. His eyes moved toward the hallway, then back to me. Drive carefully. It was not an apology. It was also not nothing. The hallway smelled faintly of somebody's burnt popcorn. I waited for the elevator, rode down alone, and walked across the parking lot under the yellow security lights. Halfway home, guilt appeared in the passenger seat. It told me I could have stayed. It reminded me that I had no early meeting, no husband waiting, no reason to leave except a line I had drawn myself. It suggested that boundaries were merely selfishness with better vocabulary. I drove past my turn, circled the block, and came home from the other direction. The next morning, Evan posted in the recovery group that the night had gone well. He thanked me for the first shift and Tessa for arranging someone to cover her place the following evening. Tessa had called a co-worker named Lila, whom Celia knew from their volunteer committee. Evan had asked. Someone had answered. The world had continued. On Wednesday, I arrived for my promised afternoon. Evan met me at the door in a clean shirt. The blue arrows were gone from the floor. Celia made me remove them, he said. The apartment may become impossible to navigate. I left one by the bathroom. Rebellion. He picked up his work bag. Her medication is on the counter, I know. She ate lunch. I'm glad. Physical therapy wore her out. I'll let her rest. He hesitated as if waiting for me to request the full report. I'll be back by 5, he said. I'll leave when you return. He nodded. No notebook changed hands. Celia slept for an hour. I read in the chair beside her, not Walter's Bible, but a mystery novel Darlene had recommended at the diner. When Celia woke, we ate soup and discussed whether the detective was too stupid to deserve the solution. At 4, she walked the length of the hallway with a cane. At 5, Evan returned carrying groceries. He looked surprised to find the kitchen intact and no emergency waiting for him. Good day? He asked. Good enough, Celia said. I gathered my things. There's soup in the refrigerator, I told her. Thank you. Evan lifted the container. You labeled it. The soup cannot read. He smiled before remembering not to. By the end of the week, Joanne had returned from Milwaukee and taken 2 nights. Laurel kept delivering food. Reed drove Celia to therapy without losing the building again. Tessa recovered and stayed one evening, bringing card games and a strict ban on medical conversation. Their help was imperfect, noisy, and real. Mine was no longer the floor beneath it. On the final day of his 30-day deadline, Evan came for the bread maker, the last box, and the vacuum's attachments, which had been discovered under the guest bed. He stood in the yellow room after everything was gone. You really cleared it out. I said I would. What are you putting in here? I haven't decided. He ran a hand along the top of the dresser. It looks like a hotel. It looked like storage before. It used to feel like I could come home. The words entered softly, without the anger I had prepared for. You can visit, I said. That's not the same. No. He looked at me then. I wanted to tell him he could always come home. The sentence rose to my lips, polished by years of use. But he did not want a home. He wanted a place that required no knocking, no asking, and no explanation of when he might leave again. I can be your mother without keeping your abandoned vacuum cleaner, I said. He looked toward the clean closet. Celia wants you to come Friday, he said. To supper? At Reed and Laurel's. Did they invite me? Laurel asked me to tell you that is a dangerous system. I know. The acknowledgement surprised us both. I'll ask her to call, he said. Then I'll answer. He carried the bread maker downstairs. At the side door, he shifted it under one arm. You know it doesn't have the paddle, I said. Yes, so it can't make bread. I know. Then why keep it? He looked down at the machine. I'm not ready to decide. For once, he carried the unfinished decision away himself. Laurel called 12 minutes after Evan left. I am formally inviting you to supper, she said. Friday at 6:30. Reed is cooking, which means we will eat at 7:15. What is he making? He says risotto. That explains the delay. You are not allowed to bring anything. I could bring salad. No. Bread? No. Wine? Marnie. I have never arrived at supper empty-handed. Then bring your hands. We may need help when Reed realizes risotto requires stirring. I agreed to come. On Friday, I stood in my kitchen for 10 minutes staring at a bottle of wine. I picked it up, set it down, picked it up again, and finally left it on the counter. Arriving with nothing felt less like being a guest and more like being unprepared for an emergency. Reed and Laurel lived in a converted warehouse with brick walls, tall windows, and pipes painted black, so everyone would understand the building had once done something important. Their apartment smelled of onions, butter, and worry. Tessa opened the door. She looked at my empty hands. Hold out your arms. Why? I need to make sure you're not concealing a casserole. I was told not to bring anything, and yet we know your history. She patted the sides of my coat, then stepped back. She's clean, she called. Laurel came from the kitchen and hugged me. Thank you for coming. Thank you for calling. I should have called before. Yes. She blinked, then nodded. Yes. No one had been trained for a Marnie who allowed a true sentence to remain in the room. Reed stood at the stove, stirring a wide pan. Don't ask when it'll be ready, he said. I wasn't going to. Your face was. Joanne sat at the dining table with a glass of wine. When I entered, she rose and pulled out the chair beside her. I don't require an aisle, she said. I've heard. I sat. Celia and Evan arrived last. Celia used a cane and moved carefully, but color had returned to her face. Evan held the door, took her coat, and waited until she was settled before greeting anyone else. When he saw me, his expression changed almost imperceptibly. You came. I was invited. I know. Celia leaned over and kissed my cheek. I can walk without the cane at home, she said. Then why did you bring it? Because Evan sees uneven pavement as an assassination attempt. It is visibly uneven, he said. The risotto took another 40 minutes. During that time, Tessa made drinks, Laurel assembled a salad, and Joanne set the table. Evan stood beside Reed and read instructions from a cookbook Reed insisted he did not need. Everyone helped. No one asked me to. At first, I sat with my hands folded so tightly they began to ache. Then I forced myself to relax them. I drank wine. I listened to Tessa describe a meeting in which her supervisor used the phrase collaborative silence and refused to explain it. When Laurel dropped a fork, I bent to retrieve it. She put a hand on my shoulder. Leave it. It's by my foot. I can get another fork. It takes less time to pick this one up. Marnie, I am trying to let you be a guest. I am trying to prevent a puncture wound. We both reached for it, bumped heads, and began laughing. The evening loosened after that. At supper, Evan sat across from me. The risotto was slightly undercooked and far too salty. Everyone praised it with enough enthusiasm to make Reed suspicious. This is terrible, he said after his third bite. It has character, Joanne told him. It has a mineral deposit. Celia laughed so hard she had to hold her hip. Without speaking, Evan placed one hand behind her chair and waited until the pain passed. He did not offer a printout. He did not tell her how to breathe. He was learning. That should have pleased me without hurting. It did not. Part of me resented that the boundary was working because success meant they could live without everything I once supplied. After supper, Laurel brought out a grocery store pie still in its plastic shell. I was going to bake, she said, but then I remembered I have self-respect. I could have brought dessert, I said. 6 people answered. No. Even Evan smiled. When plates were cleared, he thanked everyone who had helped during Celia's recovery. He named the nights Joanne stayed, Reed's rides, Laurel's meals, and Tessa's games. Then he looked at me. And Mom came when we had that overnight gap, he said. She gave me a few hours of sleep when I really needed them. The gratitude was accurate, limited, and public. It was not an apology. Thank you, Celia said to me. You're welcome. Joanne caught my eye, but wisely kept her expression to herself. At the end of the evening, I put on my coat and found Evan waiting near the elevator. I'll walk you down, he said. I know where the lobby is. I'm aware. We rode in silence. In the parking lot, he took my elbow when I stepped off the curb. I pulled away. It's uneven, he said. I have my original hip. That doesn't make it good. We reached my car. He waited while I found my keys. How's the yellow room? He asked. Yellow. Do you know what you're doing with it? Ruth says I should put in a desk. You don't need a desk. Apparently, I don't need a guest room either. He looked toward the apartment windows. I didn't say you should keep it for me. You said it used to feel like you could come home. That's not the same thing. I know. He rubbed the back of his neck. I wasn't trying to erase you at the chapel. Then what were you trying to do? His hand dropped. The question stood between us under the parking lot lights. Celia opened an upstairs window and called, "Evan, did you take my cane?" He looked down. The cane was hooked over his arm. "Yes, I need that more than your mother does." He lifted it to show her. Our moment closed. "Drive carefully," he told me. "You've said that before. I meant it before." I drove home with the unopened bottle of wine still on my kitchen counter, and the strange feeling that something had shifted half an inch. It rained Tuesday morning. Not a hard rain, just a steady drizzle that darkened the deck boards and filled the gutters with the first fallen leaves. I noticed water pooling near the back steps while I was making coffee. One of my planters had tipped against the drain. I could have left it. The water was not entering the house. The planter was not valuable. No one expected me to fix it before breakfast. I put on Walter's old rain jacket and stepped outside. The planter was heavier than it looked. Wet soil usually is. I dragged it away from the drain, dislodged a clump of leaves with my shoe, and turned toward the door. My left foot slid. There was no dramatic moment to consider my life. 1 second, I was upright, annoyed by rain. The next, the sky tipped, the railing struck my shoulder, and I landed on the edge of the bottom step. Pain shot from my wrist to my elbow. I lay still. Rain tapped the hood of Walter's jacket. Water ran beneath my hip. My first clear thought was that I had left the coffee on. My second was that I could not stand. The telephone was in my jacket pocket. I pulled it out with my right hand and called Ruth. She answered on the first ring. "What happened? Why do you assume something happened? You never call before 8:30. I fell. "Where?" "Back steps. Can you move?" "Yes." "I object to it, but yes." "Did you hit your head?" "No." "Call Evan. I'm getting dressed. I called you. Call him too. Just come. Marnie, please." That stopped her. "I'm on my way," she said. The 12-minute drive took her 9. By then, I had managed to sit upright against the railing, but every attempt to rise made the yard swim. Ruth came through the side gate wearing sweatpants beneath a raincoat and slippers inside rubber boots. "You look ridiculous," I told her. "You're sitting in a puddle." She crouched beside me. My wrist had swollen and my hip felt as though someone had driven a nail into it. Ruth helped me stand 1 inch at a time. I leaned on her all the way through the kitchen. "Evan?" she asked when I was in a chair. "No." "Why not? Because I called you." "That is not an answer. It's early. Celia is still recovering, he has work, and you have a wrist shaped like a question mark." The clinic confirmed a small fracture near the joint and a badly bruised hip. No surgery, no hospital stay, but I left with my wrist in a rigid brace, instructions to keep weight off my left side, and a list of symptoms that would require another visit. Ruth drove my car home while I complained about every turn. "You asked me to come," she said. "I did not ask you to aim for potholes. I'm aiming for character development." At home, she made toast, turned off the coffee pot, and moved the wet planter farther from the drain. She stayed that night despite my protests. "Tell Evan," she said before going to sleep in the yellow room. "No. He's going to find out. I will tell him when I am ready. You're punishing him." "I am not." "Then why are you hiding it?" I looked at the brace. "Because I don't want to find out whether he comes from love or obligation." Ruth's face softened, but she did not agree. Celia called the following afternoon. I tried to sound normal. That lasted until I dropped the phone while moving it from one hand to the other. "What was that?" she asked. "Nothing. You said nothing exactly like I did before surgery," I told her. She went silent. "Marnie, is it broken?" "Small fracture. Does Evan know?" "No." "Why?" "Because I called Ruth." That does not answer why he doesn't know. Apparently this family has agreed on one sentence. I heard Celia breathe out. "I won't keep it from him. I didn't ask you to, didn't you?" "No. I only wanted to tell him myself." "When?" I had no answer. Evan arrived 30 minutes later. He knocked so hard the governor's chime gave up halfway through. When I opened the door, his eyes dropped to the brace, then to the cane Ruth had left beside me. What happened? I slipped on the back steps. "When?" "Yesterday morning." "Yesterday?" His voice rose. "I'm all right." You have a broken wrist, a small one. There are no decorative fractures, Mom. He stepped inside and shut the door. Who took you to the clinic? Ruth. And you didn't call me. Ruth was available. I was available. You were working. You didn't know what I was doing because you didn't call. I moved toward the living room. He followed. Why didn't you tell me? He demanded. I sat carefully, because I handled it. His face went still. That's what this is? He said. You wanted to prove you don't need me? No, then explain it. I looked at my son, furious because my pain had occurred beyond his reach. You told me I made myself the most important person in every room, I said. I was trying not to make myself the most important problem in yours. You don't get to do that. Do what? Decide I'm irrelevant and call it a boundary. I didn't decide you were irrelevant, I said. You had a fall serious enough to break a bone, and I heard about it from my wife. You heard the next day. That is not better. I called someone who could help. I could have helped. Yes. Then why Ruth? Because Ruth did not need me to be helpless before she remembered I mattered. Because she had never put a word like chosen between us and sharpened both sides. I did not say either thing. She lives 12 minutes away, I said. I live 15, she answered. I would have answered. You're angry about a test I never gave you. He paced to the window. The limp in my walk had frightened him. I could see the fear trying to disguise itself as authority. I am your son, he said. You told me that title did not guarantee me a place. I was talking about a pew. You were talking about family. It was one sentence. It was a sentence you prepared a whole room to support. He turned. What is that supposed to mean? You moved the Bible. You canceled the reading. You told people I chose the back. You put Joanne in the photographs and thanked her for unconditional support. That's a lot of effort for one stressed sentence. His face lost color. I had never arranged the pieces aloud before. Once placed together, they formed something neither of us could call accidental. Evan sat on the edge of Walter's chair. The sight bothered me. He had Walter's long hands and the same habit of rubbing his thumb against the side of his index finger when he was searching for words. Yesterday, when I was sitting outside in the rain, I said, I didn't think, call your son. I thought, don't bother Evan. You wouldn't have been bothering me. How would I know? Because I came. After Celia called, I came as soon as I knew. I believe you. Then what do you want? There was the question again. He kept looking for the task hidden inside my hurt. Return a key, move some boxes, make a call, put me in the correct chair and close the subject. I want to understand why you did it, I said. I told you. The day was chaotic. No. His eyes met mine. No more flowers, I said. No more schedule. No more Marcy. Why did you move me? He stood. I shouldn't have said it. That is not why. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be unusual. He flinched. I regretted the line immediately, but I did not retrieve it. Evan went into the kitchen. Cabinet doors opened. Water ran. He returned with a glass and placed it on the table beside me. I can get my own water. Can you? With my right hand, then get it. He picked the glass up again and thrust it toward me. I took it. We glared at each other while I drank, which was not dignified for either of us. He sat across from me. You never wanted the blessing, he said. I wanted you to be happy. You wanted us to be reasonable. The chair covers were $12 apiece. This is not about the chair covers. I agree. You asked why we needed a ceremony when we were already legally married. I was worried about the cost. You asked whether Celia's friends needed to be part of every decision. There were too many people making decisions. You asked why Joanne was reading from Dad's Bible. That hurt me. You didn't say that. You made a joke about the tax office. I was trying not to make it a problem. You made everything a problem without admitting any of it was emotional. The accusation found its mark. Practicality had always been my respectable coat. I wore it over fear, grief, jealousy, and love. until even I forgot what was underneath. I thought I was being useful, I said. You were making it clear you thought the whole thing was foolish. I did not think your marriage was foolish. Not the marriage. The way we wanted to celebrate it. I set the glass down. Fine, I said. I questioned too much. I made you defend things you should have been allowed to enjoy. That still does not explain the pew. His jaw moved. Evan, you kept acting like you had the final vote, so you showed me I had none. He looked away. The answer arrived in the silence before he spoke it. Yes. The word was almost too quiet to hear. I waited. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You told me the ceremony was unnecessary. You said Joanne reading from Dad's Bible would feel strange. You asked why the front pew needed to be full of people who weren't related to us. I said that in my kitchen. I know, not at the chapel. I know, so you punished me there. He closed his eyes. Yes. The room seemed larger, as if truth had pushed the walls back. I had wanted him to admit intention, because intention would prove I was not imagining the cruelty. I had not considered what I would do once he did. Did Celia know? I asked. No. Joanne? No. Just you. Yes. You moved me yourself so nobody else would have to know what they were doing. His throat worked. Yes. The brace around my wrist felt suddenly too tight. Why the Bible? I don't know. That is not true. It was on the seat. You could have moved the rosemary. You carried Walter's Bible past 3 pews. He stood again, but there was nowhere left to pace. He went to the mantel and stared at a photograph of himself and Walter repairing the porch screen years ago. Dad's Bible was part of the story, he said. What story? That you built me. I did not understand at first. He turned from the mantel. They know I had a bad year. They know I was depressed after the divorce. But they don't know all of it. All of what? That I lived here for almost a year. That you paid bills because I couldn't keep them straight. That some mornings you had to knock on the door 3 times before I got up. That you called the dentist and canceled an appointment because I couldn't make a telephone call without feeling sick. His face was red now. They know you helped. They don't know how much. Why not? Because I didn't tell them. Celia? She knows more than the others. Not everything. I looked at him. You thanked Joanne for showing you unconditional support. She did support me, I know, but she met me after I could stand up. There it was. Joanne's sentence came back. Loving me never made him feel ashamed. Evan pressed both hands against the mantel. When I'm with them, I'm the person who got through it, he said. When I'm with you, I'm still the man in the upstairs room. I never said that. You don't have to. You remind me to eat. You ask if I paid my insurance. You keep my things like I'm coming back after the next disaster. You left them here. I know. His voice broke on the words. He looked down until he had control again. I wanted one day where I wasn't your rescued son, he said. I wanted them in front because they know the version of me I can stand being. And you wanted me in the back because I knew the rest. Yes. Rainwater still tapped from the gutter outside. Somewhere upstairs, Ruth was moving around in the yellow room. A drawer opened and closed. You could have asked me to step back, I said. You would have said you already had. That may be true. You would have smiled and helped anyway. Then I would have spent the whole day knowing you were hurt. So you hurt me where you didn't have to look. He covered his face with one hand. Yes. The answer carried no defense now. I felt anger, vindication, sorrow, and an absurd desire to touch his hair. I kept both hands in my lap. You thought I would absorb it, I said. He lowered his hand. I thought you'd be upset. I thought we'd argue later. Then you would host supper and tell me to take leftovers, and eventually it would become one more story about me being thoughtless. That is a very ugly picture of me. It's an ugly picture of both of us. I could not disagree. For years, I had accepted injuries before anyone asked whether I should. Then I turned endurance into evidence of love and expected gratitude for a bargain nobody remembered making. But I had not put myself behind that column. "I'm sorry," Evan said. I looked at him. He did not add F. He did not mention stress. "I'm sorry I moved the Bible," he continued. "I'm sorry I lied to everybody about why you sat there. I'm sorry I let you host supper afterward and acted like none of it mattered. I wanted you to feel small for questioning me." The room blurred. I blinked until it settled. "You succeeded." "I know." "No, I don't think you do." I sat there wondering how my own son had reached the point where my presence embarrassed him more than my absence. His mouth twisted. "I'm ashamed of what I needed," he said. "Not of you. You made me carry the difference." "I know." The front door opened. Ruth entered carrying a paper sack and an umbrella that had turned itself inside out. She saw Evan and stopped. "I can come back. You live 12 minutes away," I said. "Apparently that makes you essential." Neither of them laughed. Ruth set the sack on the entry table. "I bought groceries. Thank you." She looked from my face to Evan's. "Have we reached throwing things? My left hand is unavailable." "Good. I bought eggs." She picked up her umbrella and disappeared toward the kitchen. Evan wiped his eyes with the heel of his hand. "I should go." "Probably." He stood but did not move toward the door. "Do you forgive me?" he asked. The same question Celia had asked when she was in pain. "I believe you are sorry." "That isn't what I asked. It is what I can give you today." He nodded. "What happens now?" "I don't know. Do I call you? If you want to speak to me. Can I come by?" "If you ask." He glanced at my brace. "Can I take you to the follow-up appointment?" "Ruth is taking me." "Of course she is." "That was not punishment." "I know." He picked up his jacket. At the door, he turned. "Is there anything you need?" The old answer rose automatically. "Nothing." I looked toward the rain-darkened back steps. "The drain needs clearing," I said, "and the planter is too heavy for Ruth. I can do that. Ask before you move anything else." "I will." He left his jacket on the chair, went through the kitchen, and stepped outside into the drizzle. From the window, I watched him clear wet leaves from the drain. He moved the planter, tested the railing, and did not attempt to improve anything I had not requested. Ruth came to stand beside me. "Did he apologize?" she asked. "Yes." "Properly?" "Yes." "That's inconvenient." "Very." Outside, Evan looked up and saw us watching. He did not wave. He bent back to the work I had actually asked him to do. He came in 10 minutes later with wet hair and mud along one knee. "The drain is clear," he said. "The planter is beside the wall. The railing is loose at the bottom." I asked about the drain and planter. "I'm reporting the railing." "That's allowed." "Do you want me to fix it?" "Not today." He nodded as if we were practicing a foreign language. Ruth handed him a dish towel. "You left your jacket in the living room." "I know." "Then why are you dripping in the kitchen?" "I didn't want it wet." "The jacket?" "Yes." Ruth looked at me. "He gets that from Walter. Walter once put a raincoat over a new wheelbarrow and stood in the rain himself." "It was a good wheelbarrow," Evan said. The answer came so naturally that for a moment Walter seemed to be in the room with us, not as a wound but as the source of a ridiculous family trait. Evan dried his hair. "I'll call before I come back about the railing," he said. "You don't have to repair everything." "I know." He looked at my brace. "I'm learning." After he left, Ruth opened the paper sack and took out eggs, oranges, bread, coffee, and a jar of olives. Why olives? I was emotional in the store. She began putting things away. "You don't know where anything goes," I said. "I know where food goes. That philosophy caused trouble at the reception." Ruth placed the coffee in the refrigerator. "See?" I said. She moved it to the pantry. Evan called the next evening. I answered on the third ring. "Hi," he said. "Hello. How's your wrist?" "Still attached." "Good." We sat in silence. "Did you need something?" I asked. "No." Another silence. I could hear traffic through his car speaker. "Are you driving?" I asked. "I'm parked." "Where?" "Outside the hardware store. Do you need the railing measurements?" "No, I wrote them down." "Then why did you call?" "I thought we established I could call if I wanted to speak to you." "We did. I wanted to speak to you." "All right." Neither of us knew what came after that. Finally, he said, "The bread maker is on our kitchen counter, without a paddle." "Yes, Celia wants to put flowers in it. That might be its highest purpose. She says you'll appreciate that." "She's right." He laughed. The conversation lasted 6 minutes. He did not ask me to find a receipt, remember an appointment, store an object, or settle a decision. After we hung up, I cried in the pantry beside the properly placed coffee. Repair did not arrive as one grand gesture. It came in small, awkward deliveries, often at inconvenient hours. Evan called again 2 days later to tell me Reed had attempted risotto a second time and produced something that could patch drywall. He asked whether I wanted company at my follow-up appointment. I told him Ruth was taking me, and he said, "Okay," without turning the word into an injury. He came Saturday to fix the railing after calling first. I stayed inside while he worked. When he finished, he asked me to test it instead of declaring it safe. It held. "Thank you," I said. "You're welcome." He did not ask for a key. Celia visited after my brace was replaced with a lighter one. She brought the bread maker filled with yellow chrysanthemums. "This is either a present or an insult," I said. "Both. It may leak." I put a bowl inside. We carried it to the yellow room where I had added a narrow desk beneath the window. Ruth found it at an estate sale and insisted it had good energy, though it mostly had one short leg. Celia saw the wobble. "Reed can fix that, so can folded cardboard. Reed needs opportunities to recover from the risotto." We sat on the bed. Her cane was gone, though she still moved carefully when she stood. "I wanted to apologize again," she said. "You already did. I was medicated. You were coherent. I want you to know it wasn't the medication." I touched one of the flowers. "All right. I should have asked why you were in the back. I should have made room for you in the photograph. And when you returned the key, I treated your hurt like an inconvenience because I was afraid it would spoil my memory of the day. That day can still be beautiful to you. It is. Parts of it. That's usually how days work." She smiled. "I forgive you," I said. Her eyes filled, but she did not make me comfort her. "Thank you. I am not ready to call the blessing perfect. I would be concerned if you did." She looked around the room. "What are you going to use this for?" "Reading. Paying bills. Maybe writing letters." "To whom?" "People who deserve the inconvenience." She picked up the bread maker and moved it to the desk. The yellow flowers looked absurdly pleased with themselves. Before leaving, Celia asked whether I wanted to come to dinner the following Sunday. "Where?" "Our apartment." "Who's cooking?" "Evan." "What's the emergency plan?" "Pizza." I went. Evan made roast chicken, green beans, and potatoes that were cold in the center. I ate everything without correction. When he asked what I thought, I said the chicken was good. And the potatoes? They were present. He laughed instead of defending them. It was only the 3 of us. No one made a toast. No one discussed chosen family. Celia went to bed early when her hip began to ache, and Evan walked me downstairs. At my car, he said, "I meant what I said at your house." "I know. I don't expect you to forget." "Good. But sometimes I feel like every conversation is an exam I already failed." I closed the car door without getting in. Sometimes I feel like every kind thing I do will be used as proof that the chapel didn't matter. He considered that. So what do we do? Stop grading the conversation. That sounds like therapy language. I've been around Joanne. He smiled. Thanksgiving came with 3 invitations. Reed and Laurel offered their apartment. Joanne offered her dining room and promised nobody else would cook rice. Evan and Celia asked if I wanted to join them wherever I preferred. Ruth had already invited me to her house. I chose Ruth. Evan was quiet when I told him. "Is this because of us?" he asked. It is because Ruth asked first, and I want to go. Okay, you and Celia are welcome to stop by for dessert if you choose. We're going to Joanne's. Then have a good time. Are you sure? Yes. He believed me on the second answer. At Ruth's, the turkey finished 2 hours late because she had not fully thawed it. We ate cheese, olives, and bread while waiting. These ingredients have become a pattern, I said. I know my strengths. We laughed until the smoke alarm interrupted us. Evan called that evening, not to ask where anything was, but to tell me Joanne had forbidden Reed from carving the turkey after he sharpened the knife for 20 minutes. At Christmas, I invited Evan and Celia to my house for brunch. Not the whole group, not 12 people. Not a monthly supper revived under another name. I wanted my son at my table. He arrived carrying flowers and knocked on the side door. You can come in, I called. I'm waiting for you to open it. The door is unlocked. I know. I opened it. He held up the flowers. Am I allowed to bring things now? Yes. Do you have a vase? I have 14. Can I choose one? No. The boundary did not disappear. It became less theatrical. Sometimes I said no and no one left angry. Sometimes Evan asked for help and I gave it because I wanted to. When he needed a ride while his car was being repaired, he asked 3 days ahead. I took him and refused gas money. When I needed the storm windows lowered, I asked him instead of attempting them alone. He came Sunday afternoon after calling and complained about Walter's labeling system. Window hardware miscellaneous is not a category, he said. It was to your father. This box contains string. That could be window string. It's red ribbon. Festive window string. We found the correct screws eventually. Joanne remained part of their lives without sitting in my place. She and I met for coffee twice, which was enough. We liked each other better in measured doses. She told Evan directly that he had turned affection into a contest she had never entered. He did not tell me the details, and I did not ask her to report them. Spring returned. The wrist healed, though it ached before rain. My hip bruise faded from purple to yellow and then disappeared. I kept the cane in the hall closet, not because I expected another fall, but because throwing away a useful object seemed theatrical. The yellow room became a place I used. I paid bills at the desk, read in the afternoon light, and wrote Ruth a letter complaining about her habit of leaving sweaters in my car. She called to ask why I had spent money on a stamp when we spoke every day. Letters are evidence, I told her. Of what? That you were annoying in permanent form. Near the end of summer, Reverend Moss called. We're planning the remembrance service at Stonebrook, he said. Walter's 5th anniversary falls that week. I know. Would you like us to include his name? Yes. There's something else. I waited. We never used the passage you brought for Evan and Celia's blessing. The blue Bible rested on the end table beside me. No, I said. I wondered whether you might read it at the remembrance service. Not because of what happened then, because it was Walter's passage and because you knew how he heard it. My first response rose instantly. No. The chapel belonged to the column, the empty pew, and Evan's hand carrying the Bible away. Returning felt like volunteering to enter an old pain and hoping it had learned manners. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course. I left the Bible closed for 3 days. On the 4th, I opened to the marked passage. Walter's question waited in the margin. Does this include hard-headed sons? Below it, in different ink and smaller letters, I had once written, especially. I called Reverend Moss. Yes, I said, I'll read. I did not tell Evan until 2 weeks before the service. We were having coffee at my kitchen table. He had come by to return a container, which was new behavior worth noting. Reverend Moss asked me to read from Walter's Bible, I said. At Stonebrook? Yes. His hand tightened around his cup. The same passage? Yes. Do you want me there? The question mattered more than the answer. Yes, I said, if you want to come. I do. On the morning of the service, I dressed in blue and placed Walter's funeral card between the pages of the Bible. Then I carried it to the car without fastening the seatbelt around it. Some risks were reasonable. Evan was waiting outside the chapel when I arrived. He wore a charcoal jacket and no tie. Celia stood beside him, leaning lightly on a cane because the ground was uneven from an overnight rain. Neither of them came toward my car until I opened the door. Evan looked at the Bible in my hands. For a moment, all three of us stood beneath the stone bell tower listening to water drip from the trees. "Where would you like to sit?" he asked. I looked past him at the chapel doors. "Halfway down," I said. "On the aisle." Evan nodded. He did not say the front had been reserved. He did not tell me where Reverend Moss expected us. He opened the heavy wooden door and let me enter first. The chapel smelled of damp stone, furniture polish, and the white lilies arranged near the altar. Sunlight came through the stained glass in pale strips, weaker than it had been on the day of the blessing. I heard the scrape of a chair from somewhere near the front. My body remembered before my mind did. My chest tightened. My left hand closed around the Bible. For one instant, I could see Evan in his gray suit carrying it down the aisle, his face arranged against me. Celia touched my shoulder. "We can sit in the main sanctuary," she said quietly. "No, we don't have to prove anything. I'm not proving anything." That was almost true. I walked to a short pew halfway down the chapel, far enough from the stone column to see the whole altar. I sat on the aisle and placed Walter's Bible beside me. Evan stopped at the end of the pew. "Here?" he asked. The Bible lay between us. I moved my purse to the floor, making room on the far side of it. "Here." He entered the pew and sat beside the Bible without touching it. Celia settled on his other side, resting her cane against the wood. Ruth was already seated behind us. She leaned forward. "I saved you a place," she whispered. "I found one. I see that." She looked at the Bible between Evan and me, then at my face. For once, my sister chose not to improve the moment with accuracy. Joanne sat across the aisle. She wore a dark green jacket and no expression I could read. Reed and Laurel were 2 rows behind her. I had not invited any of them, but Evan must have. The old irritation stirred, then settled. Walter had liked Reed. He had once spent an entire supper explaining water pressure to him, while Reed nodded as if receiving military intelligence. Reverend Moss came down the aisle and touched my shoulder. "You still comfortable reading?" "No." He smiled. "Good. Confidence makes people rush. That is a strange pastoral method. I'm trying something new." The organ began before I could ask whether Walter's name was first or last. It played softly without the grand opening that had marked the blessing. No doors opened. No one stood. This service was not a performance of arrival. Reverend Moss welcomed us, then read the names of those being remembered. Some belonged to people in the chapel. Others belonged only to the air and whoever had carried them there. When he said Walter Cole, I heard Ruth inhale behind me. Evan lowered his head. I looked at his hands. They rested open on his knees, not clenched, not reaching. Reverend Moss spoke about the objects that outlive people, tools with familiar wear, recipes written in impatient handwriting, books that fall open to the same page because someone loved it often. Walter had left all 3. His socket case now lived in Evan's apartment. His biscuit recipe remained stuck inside my kitchen cabinet, where he taped it after accusing me of using too much flour. His Bible sat between our son and me. "Memory is not obedience," Reverend Moss said. "We do not honor the dead by freezing the living around the shape of their absence. We honor them by allowing what they gave us to keep changing us." Ruth shifted behind me. She would later accuse him of therapy language. I looked at Walter's funeral card marking the passage. For 4 years after his death, I had kept the house ready for people who did not live there. Evan's room, Evan's boxes, extra chairs, extra food, extra patience. I called it loyalty. Some of it was fear. If I remained the place everyone returned to, then perhaps Walter had not left me in a house that no longer knew its purpose. The organ stopped. Reverend Moss looked toward me. My turn. I reached for the Bible. Evan moved his hand out of the way before I touched it. Not dramatically. He simply made sure there was room. I stood and carried the book to the lectern. From the front, I could see the whole chapel. The pew where I had sat behind the column was empty. The first pew was also empty, except for 2 folded programs. Nobody had won it. I opened the Bible. Walter's funeral card slid free and fluttered toward the floor. Evan rose halfway from his seat. I caught the card against the side of the lectern. "I've got it," I said. He sat again. A few people smiled. The sound of my voice steadied me. The page had softened at the crease. Walter's block letters filled the margin beside the lines about patience, kindness, pride, and the refusal to keep a ledger of wrongs. I had always disliked that last part. A ledger is useful. It tells you what was given, what was taken, and what remains unpaid. Without one, people can convince you that a pattern was an accident. But Walter had not written beside that line. He had written beside patience. Does this include hard-headed sons? And beneath it, my answer, especially. I began to read. My voice trembled on the first sentence. I stopped, took a breath, and began again. The words did not ask me to pretend the chapel had not happened. They did not require me to reopen my house, return a key, or sit wherever someone placed me. They only described love as something larger than injury, and less interested in victory than I had sometimes wanted it to be. When I reached the end, the room remained quiet. No applause. I was grateful. I closed the Bible and looked toward Evan. He was crying without covering his face. Celia held his hand. Ruth held a tissue, but, in an act of great restraint, did not lean forward to give it to him. I returned to the pew. Once again, I laid the Bible between Evan and me. He left it exactly where I put it. The service continued. Reverend Moss prayed. The organ played something Walter used to hum with the wrong rhythm. Sunlight moved slowly across the floor until one blue strip reached the toe of Evan's shoe. When it ended, people rose without hurry. Laurel hugged me. Reed told me Walter would have enjoyed the service, then immediately worried the remark was presumptuous. He would have complained about the organ, I said. That sounds right. Joanne waited until the aisle cleared. You read beautifully, she said. I read slowly. Those are often confused. She touched Evan's shoulder, then mine, and left with Reed and Laurel. She did not linger to witness what came next. I appreciated her for that. Ruth helped Celia navigate the wet path outside, though Celia protested she had a cane and had survived physical therapy. I'm protecting the church from a lawsuit, Ruth said. There will be no lawsuit, I told her. Then I'm protecting myself from guilt. They went ahead. Evan and I remained seated. The chapel emptied around us. Someone closed a door near the altar. The sound echoed. Evan looked at the Bible. I remember Dad writing in it, he said. He usually wrote during sermons. He said it helped him think. He also drew a picture of Reverend Moss as a potato. Evan laughed through the remains of his tears. Can I see? I lifted the Bible and handed it to him. That was different from leaving it for him to move. He opened to the marked page. His thumb rested near Walter's note, careful not to cover it. Hard-headed sons, he read. Your father believed in specificity. Then he saw my answer beneath it. His mouth tightened. When did you write that? Years ago. After he died? Before. During a sermon about patience. You were late for Thanksgiving and had forgotten the rolls. I brought rolls. You brought hamburger buns. The store was out. The store was not out of bread. You panicked in the bread aisle. He wiped his cheek. Why especially? Because hard-headed sons require specialized patience. No. I mean, why did you answer him? Because he passed me the Bible and tapped the question until I wrote something. That sounds like Dad. Yes. Evan closed the book but kept it in his lap. I should have chosen you that day, he said. You should not have made it a choice. He nodded. I know. Do you? Yes. Joanne isn't less family because you are my mother. Reed and Laurel didn't need your seat to matter. I turned love into a row of people and decided somebody had to be in back. You decided it would be me. Yes. The word still hurt. It no longer surprised me. He looked toward the altar. When you said you weren't coming back to the old arrangement, I thought you meant you were done loving me. I know. That wasn't fair. No. Some days I still miss it. The old arrangement? Knowing I could call and you would fix everything before I finished asking. I miss being able to. He looked at me. The confession felt more dangerous than anger. I liked being needed, I said. After your father died, I liked it too much. Every problem you brought me gave the day a shape. I did things you didn't ask for and called them love because I was afraid an invitation might not come. I did invite you. Sometimes. Other times you opened the refrigerator. That was an invitation to make me a sandwich. I understood. We smiled. Then the smile faded. I do forgive you, I said. Evan looked down at the Bible. I wasn't sure. Neither was I. When? It happened in pieces. The drain, the telephone calls, the cold potatoes. They were not cold. They were refrigerated at the center. Celia said the same thing. She is an honest woman. He ran his palm lightly over the blue leather. Do I get a key again? No. He nodded, almost smiling. Good. Good? I wanted to ask once so we wouldn't have to circle it forever. You may ask again when I'm 90. You'll say no. Probably. I'll bring cake. That would be bribery. He handed the Bible back. I don't want the old arrangement either, he said, except when life gets hard. That is when people want their old arrangements. What do we do when it gets hard? Ask. And you might say no. Yes. What if I really need you? Tell me the truth about the need. Don't hand me a grocery list and expect me to find the fear underneath. He looked embarrassed. I do that? You once asked whether I had extra freezer bags when your first marriage was ending. We needed freezer bags. You needed somewhere to sleep. We also needed freezer bags. I laughed. Outside, Ruth opened the chapel door. If you two are starting over from the beginning, she called, Celia and I are getting lunch. We're coming, I said. Ruth let the door close. Evan stood and offered me his hand. I took it, though I did not need help rising. We walked down the aisle together. At the fourth pew, I slowed. The wood looked exactly as it had a year earlier. A narrow shelf held 2 hymnals. A scratch ran along the aisle end. Nothing marked it as the place where my son had told me I did not belong. Objects are innocent that way. I touched the top of the pew, then continued toward the door. Outside, Celia stood beneath the oak while Ruth held her cane and complained about the damp. I can walk, Celia said. I know, Ruth replied. I enjoy authority. Celia looked at the Bible in my hands. Can we take a picture? The question tightened something in me. Of what? The 3 of us. Unless you don't want to. Evan said nothing. He did not turn the request into a test. Yes, I said, I want to. Ruth took Celia's phone. Evan stood on one side of me and Celia on the other. Nobody placed Joanne in the photograph. Nobody removed her from our lives either. Move closer, Ruth ordered. We are close, Evan said. You look like witnesses in a fraud trial. We moved closer. Celia put her arm around my waist. Evan rested his hand on my shoulder and waited. All right? He asked. Yes. Ruth took the picture. Then she lowered the phone and said, Now one with me. That defeats the concept of taking it yourself, Evan said. A woman leaving the chapel offered to help. Ruth joined us, giving the stranger detailed instructions until we were all laughing when the picture was taken. I invited them to lunch at my house. The invitation surprised me only after I said it. We ate ham sandwiches at the kitchen table because I had not planned anything grand. Ruth opened the olives. Celia put the bread maker full of chrysanthemums in the center of the table, though the flowers had begun to droop. Evan reached for the empty plates. "Do you want help?" he asked. "Yes." Celia washed. Evan dried. Ruth stole the remaining ham and denied it while chewing. I carried Walter's Bible to the living room and placed it on the end table beside my chair. When Evan and Celia were ready to leave, he held up the container of leftover potato salad. "Can I take this?" "Yes, but not in my glass dish." He found a plastic container and transferred it. At the side door, he stopped. "Next Sunday?" he asked. "For what?" "Coffee. Just coffee. Call me. I will." He stepped outside and waited while Celia joined him. Neither of them reached for a key. I stood in my own doorway with Walter's Bible behind me and the photograph of the three of us waiting on Celia's phone. Evan looked back once. This time, I was already where I had chosen to be.